If you oppose living with my parents, we might need to reconsider our relationship. I might even choose to divorce."
Shocked by this sudden declaration, I couldn't hide my deep surprise. I stared intently at John's serious expression. "What do you mean by that?"
Let me be clear. I plan to use that $3 million at my discretion. Specifically, I intend to use it to build a two-family home. That's all there is to it.
I was at a loss for words, stunned that Robert wanted to use the $3 million.
I had treasured from my mother as if it were his own. I'm planning to start the construction process next month. Once the house is completed, we'll move in immediately. Before that, I intend to invite my parents over to this house. I expect you to welcome them wholeheartedly. If you can't do that, we might have to reconsider the future of our relationship.
Divorce is on the table. With those words, John confidently placed a pre-filled divorce paper on the table.
I want you to understand, I make the final decisions in this house. In other words, I represent the family in making decisions. If you don't follow my intentions, we'll have to consider divorce as an option. As I stared into John's serious eyes, I tried to understand the true meaning.
Are you sure about this? Can you say you won't regret it from the bottom of your heart?
Stop it. Don't belittle my feelings right now.
Maybe he feels superior to me, or perhaps he expects me to back down as usual. With unwavering determination, he walked out of the house. I watched his back without the slightest intention of chasing after him. Time passed, and 3 days later, I am Catherine Marino, turning 40 this year. I work as an independent writer, handling various genres of articles. I met John when I was still an editor at a publishing company. I was 27, and he was 29. Our relationship deepened quickly, and we started dating soon after. We seriously considered our future, became aware of our marriage. We began our new life as an officially married couple just 6 months later. We were blessed with a child shortly after. Filled with joy, I decided to temporarily leave my job to give birth. The days of child-rearing were lively. I stayed away from work for a while, but as the children grew, I decided to pick up the pen again as a freelance writer. Currently, our family is composed of 4 members. Our eldest daughter, 11, is a curious girl. Our younger son, 10, is a lively boy who loves sports. Both of them attend a local elementary school. They are growing up happily while learning. My work style is primarily remote, which allows me to be at home when my children return from school. We feel this allows me to cherish the time I have with them. On the other hand, Robert is in sales and often works late, but he also values family time. In days off, he enjoys taking baths with the kids or occasionally going to a nearby amusement park or cinema with the family. We were proud of the stability in our family life. Every day was calm, and everything went as planned. Currently, we live in a rented house, but once the kids grow a bit older, we're considering building our dream home. We have been steadily saving for this and we're optimistic about our future. However, life is full of uncertainties. Suddenly, our peaceful life was disrupted when we discovered my mother had a severe illness. To make matters worse, her condition was quite advanced when detected. The doctor advised that the best course of action would be to make her daily life as comfortable as possible to minimize her pain. No matter how happy our family of 4 felt, myself, my husband, and our 2 kids considering the health issues of a parent makes the situation more complex. My father passed away from an illness when I was in high school. Thankfully, the mortgage was covered by insurance he had taken, but still, my mother had to raise me alone. Without family or relatives nearby, I feel she battled loneliness while supporting me. Fortunately, I was able to receive an education up to college without experiencing financial difficulties. After starting my first job, I did contribute to the household expenses. But, thanks to that, I never felt restricted when pursuing the path I wanted. I remember when Robert and I decided to marry and leave my family home. Our in-laws weren't too optimistic about our new life in this area. Actually, Robert's parents have been farmers in the area where he grew up for generations. In their farm, which has a long history and tradition, they are still proud of their agricultural work, even now in their 60s. I deeply respect their dedication. However, they have somewhat traditional values, especially a patriarchal view of the family. Robert extended his reach to the city for his college education and was content with his life and job there. It's there that he met me, fell in love, and eventually, we got married. Yet, it seemed his parents weren't entirely convinced by this choice.
Now that you're a part of our family, You should quit your job and help around the house.
Even before we got married, I was often told this by my father-in-law.
I've built my career in the city. If I were to return to the countryside, would there be a job suitable for me?
Robert took a deep breath, and after many discussions to help his in-laws understand our choices, they agreed to let us continue living in my hometown. However, they occasionally expressed their frustrations and concerns to me over the phone.
Think about it. They're also accepting our situation and have been making many compromises for us. Please, just listen to their occasional complaints over the phone.
With Robert's kind intervention, I felt that I could accept their momentary grievances. My mother feels relieved knowing we live nearby, but I can tell she's cautious to maintain a delicate distance with my in-laws. I have been patient, always keeping gratitude towards my parents in my heart, but there have been several incomprehensible remarks from my in-laws, especially their reaction when our eldest daughter, Emily, was born was shocking.
Why couldn't you give birth to a boy to continue our family lineage?
There's no plan for living together, and we can't expect a male heir. Why did Robert choose such a wife?
I was in shock and dismay when I heard their initial reaction. To speak such words at our happy moment. In response, Robert calmly replied,
That's probably rooted in their regional and cultural values. So, I'd be grateful if you could just let their words slide without taking them too deeply.
While I had many concerns, understanding their different values, I chose not to respond and acted as if I didn't hear them. Before we knew it, a year passed, and when our son, named Jack, was born.
Well done. You've done great.
Now I can truly accept Sharon as a member of the Umino family.
I was quite surprised by such welcoming words.
Everyone is happy for the child, so let's return to our family home and celebrate together.
I was taken aback by the request. To get to their house, we'd have to take a plane and a train, at least a 4-hour journey. I couldn't imagine making such a trip with a newborn and our barely 1-year-old daughter. Robert, touched by his parents' warm words, seemed to be contemplating taking the whole family back home. However, when I expressed my inner feelings, "Aren't you thinking about the children's safety? I understand the desire to see the grandparents, but such a long journey would be tough for them. If they really want to see the children, they should come here. If you insist on taking them, I might leave this house." He showed understanding. I took an approach to explain various risks and difficulties to my in-laws should any issue arise with our children. As a result, while expressing some dissatisfaction, they began to understand our position and reality. However, the communication directed at me became even more severe afterward. Every phone call was filled with criticism and blame, and it was mentally taxing. Yet, as a mother who prioritizes the safety and health of her precious children, I chose to endure. In reality, my in-laws never visited our home. A major reason was the difficulty of the journey. Just the drive from their place to the nearest train station took almost an hour. Plus, changing between several small train lines took about 2 hours, followed by a 1-hour flight to the airport. Just the travel time was 4 hours, and considering transfer and waiting times, it took at least 6 hours in total. This long travel time might have felt as burdensome as a trip abroad for my elderly in-laws. Considering the circumstances, I think it was unfortunate for them that their direct interaction with their grandchildren was limited. Of course, I wanted them to deepen their bond with the grandchildren, but if it's hard for them to visit in person, my husband and I made efforts to share the kids' growth through pictures and video messages from afar. Since the time Richard and I got married, we hadn't visited my in-laws until our children started kindergarten. But as the kids grew and it became easier to travel, Richard, adjusting his work schedule, chose a less busy period and planned a family visit to the in-laws. The travel preparations went smoothly, and soon the day arrived. Upon reaching my in-laws' home, it seemed they were delighted with our visit. However, the joy seemed somewhat directed more towards our son, Ethan, rather than our daughter, Lily. Every time I witnessed such situations, I felt a subtle discomfort and slight unease. Due to this less than pleasant experience, I felt a strong desire to avoid future visits. As time passed, Richard's workload increased, making it harder for us to make these trips. In fact, we hadn't visited my in-laws for several years after that. I admittedly felt relieved about this situation. On the other hand, my parents' house was relatively close to where we lived, so I visited often. While I sometimes felt guilty for not visiting my in-laws, recalling their past attitude alleviated those feelings. Robert understood how I felt, and for a long time, We, as a couple, felt no issues regarding this matter. However, a recent event would drastically change our peaceful daily life. Since learning of my mother's severe illness, I tried to make the most of the short time she had left. When her condition was still relatively stable, I frequently allowed my children to spend time with her, wanting them to have memories with her. Unexpectedly, I received criticism from my in-laws.
Why do our precious grandchildren spend so much time with your mother and barely any with us?
I was deeply shocked and surprised by his reproach. They don't understand. My mother doesn't have much time left. In the face of such a grave situation, I can't believe they would say such a thing. I was hurt and shared my feelings with Robert that night, shedding tears.
I might have mentioned over the phone that the kids are visiting your mom. Maybe that's why they said that, but I hope they'd understand and be patient in this situation.
His response was more subdued than I hoped for. I felt a bit disappointed in Robert at that moment. From my past experiences, he often left issues concerning his parents to me, and it felt evident again this time. Robert never truly supported me or stood up for me. He never criticized me concerning my mother. However, partly due to my guilt about his behavior, I had built the relationship with my in-laws by myself after our marriage. At this moment, I vividly realized his nature and attitude. The deep love and trust I had for Robert seemed to creak and waver. Still, the overpowering desire to rush to my mother's side was more potent than dwelling on these feelings, and I shut out the stern opinions from my in-laws. Throughout the final moments with my mother, a flurry of emotions ran through me, but it wasn't just a time of tears. When trying to protect someone you love, you can muster unexpected strength. And besides being a daughter, I also have a role as a mother. After my mother passed away, while tidying up her house, an unexpected discovery was made. It was a safety deposit box she had rented from the bank. Inside the box were unbelievable items, gold bars. The amount was far beyond expectation. Upon investigation, it was found that these were bought using the insurance money from my late father. There were also stocks stored inside the safety deposit box. When calculated in detail, the total was an astonishing $2.7 million, converted from 3 billion yen. Just looking at this number filled me with shock. Furthermore, from the depths of the box, an emotional letter written by my mother was found. The letter detailed how she had used my father's insurance money to pay off the mortgage, how she had a stable job with a steady income, and how I wasn't a child who demanded large expenses. The unused money was saved in the form of gold and stocks, wishing for it to be left for the future and for her child. Reading my mother's loving words, I tightly embraced the letter, overcome with tears. Many couples typically do not share exact inheritance amounts, but I felt it challenging to hide such a shocking sum and chose to inform Robert about this truth.
Is it really $2.7 million?
The surprise was evident on Robert's face, and he seemed momentarily at a loss for words. The weight of the reality also overwhelmed me, and I found it hard to speak for a while.
What do you plan to do with that $2.7 million, Sharon?
Robert started speaking again, questioning me about the intentions for this large sum. What to do with it? In fact, I didn't have a specific plan yet and wasn't sure about the right approach. I don't intend to touch the $2.7 million until the inheritance procedures are complete. Since I'm the only heir, I don't anticipate any problems. I just thought it was right to tell you.
Indeed. That makes sense.
However, Robert's expression changed, and he seemed deeply lost in thought. His gaze appeared distant, and I couldn't fathom what was going on in his mind. Is something bothering you? I just wanted to inform you about the truth. I looked at Robert with a hint of unease. Time passed, the inheritance procedures were successfully completed, and the massive $2.7 million was now under my name.
From now on, we'll live with my parents. If you have any objections to this, we might have to consider divorce.
I was shocked and confused by his words. Why would you say such a thing? My voice quivered as I asked.
Because I have plans to use the $2.7 million to build a duplex. That's the answer.
I was taken aback by his cold expression and words, not knowing how to respond. I really can't understand what you're trying to say.
Are you hiding something from me?
I'm not hiding anything, and I genuinely don't know what you're talking about. I was trying to understand Robert's true intentions amidst my confusion. Why did this argument suddenly start?
Sharon, you are too insensitive to other people's feelings. Can't you perceive the emotions of anyone other than yourself?
Robert sighed deeply, speaking with a weary expression.
If you look back at our past, you should understand how cold you've been to my parents.
Cold? What do you mean by that specifically? In my memory, I hardly recall doing anything to make his parents feel uncomfortable.
I often took you to your parents' house so they could see their grandchild, but you rarely gave my parents the same opportunity. It's clear discrimination.
But that's because... Searching for words, Sharon was completely at a loss due to her astonishment and confusion.
Even when I wanted to invite my parents to our house, they couldn't come mainly due to your excuses.
But in reality, I invited them to our house many times. They just didn't come because they said it was too far and difficult. Plus, we've visited their house several times, haven't we? How could Robert forget the fact that we had our wedding in both my hometown and his, just because his co-workers from his job were attending, and the distance was an issue? I was puzzled about this point.
Upon reflection, I realize we've constantly burdened my parents since our marriage. I'm considering using the inheritance to give something back to them.
I had never imagined Robert would feel this way, and I couldn't hide my astonishment. All this while, I believed I understood him, seeing him as a reasonable husband and a loving father. While I was still recovering from the shock, Robert began to elaborate on his feelings.
In fact, for a long time, I've been dissatisfied with your attitude towards my parents. They didn't have any job opportunities for me, so I reluctantly accepted the situation. Watching you prioritize only your parents, I wanted to do something nice for mine. But, being a mature adult, I hid these feelings to avoid causing any issues or making you upset at home.
His words resonated deeply within me. With a desire to understand, I decided to truly listen to what he had to say.
But if we were to get this much money, the situation would completely change. I've been working hard here, pushing through the demanding sales job. But there wouldn't be a need for that anymore. I plan to quit this job and return to my hometown. Then, I will build a new duplex there and make up for the filial duties I couldn't do before.
I remember when I mentioned the inheritance from my mother before, he quietly looked up at the sky, lost in thought. It's surprising to realize he had been thinking this way. I truly wanted to know what he was thinking. I never imagined he was planning such a future.
The construction will start next month, and as soon as the new house is ready, we will move. I want you to prepare for it. During that time, I'll invite my parents over to this house. I expect you to be the perfect host. If you can't fulfill this request, perhaps we should consider divorce. As he finished speaking, Robert forcefully placed the divorce papers, already signed with his name, on the table. I want you to understand, I'm the head of this household. Therefore, my opinions and demands are of utmost priority. Let me emphasize this. If you don't follow my words, I'm considering the option of divorce.
In shock, I stared into his eyes, trying to determine if he was serious or if there was another intent behind his words. His eyes were heated, and I sensed anger hidden within. It was clear he wasn't completely calm. Surely, he still possessed the ability to perceive the situation rationally, but at that moment, he seemed different. Above all, the existence of the $3 million had clearly captivated his heart. It felt as if stacks of bills were floating deep within his pupils. I can't live with you, I firmly conveyed to him. What nonsense are you talking about? Just thinking about it is unbearable. Living with your parents, moving to your hometown, and transferring our children to a new school. Moreover, in the current state, it's difficult for me to wholeheartedly welcome your parents.
Then it seems our paths diverge here.
There was clear anger in his eyes, but I also detected a hint of uncertainty. Perhaps divorce is the best option. But there's one thing I feel deep down: you might regret this one day.
Stop speaking nonsense.
And with that, Robert stormed out of the house. After that, there was no contact from him for 3 days.
What on earth? This is totally unexpected.
Suddenly, he called me. I could clearly sense the surprise and anger in his voice. What exactly is the issue?
The money and stock certificates are missing. The safety deposit box I entrusted them to is empty.
I thought to myself, as expected, that's what he was most concerned about. The reason they are gone is simple. I've moved the inheritance to another safe location. I don't think it's such a surprising matter.
Why didn't you inform me about this beforehand? It's such an important matter.
Even if I forgot to inform you in advance, It's ultimately the inheritance that I officially received. Shouldn't how it's handled be based on my will?
But wasn't there a discussion about me using that inheritance?
Indeed, you did argue that. However, it's not like I fully accepted that claim.
Quickly, tell me where you're hiding it.
I'm not hiding the inheritance anywhere. I've entrusted it to a trustworthy lawyer.
What? Why would you do that?
Taking a deep breath, I decided to explain the situation to him slowly. Do you know if you inherit, you're liable for inheritance tax? The tax on an inheritance of 300 million yen, roughly $2.7 million, is quite significant. To handle it, I arranged to sell the necessary assets to pay the tax. All the procedures and consultations were done through my lawyer. It was an essential procedure.
Therefore, I requested the lawyer to manage and process the inheritance in this way. In that case, I want you to retrieve the inheritance right now and give me the amount from the sold assets.
Why should I comply with your request? Aren't we, in essence, now strangers?
What are you talking about?
Robert looked perplexed. It was unclear whether he comprehended what I said. I resolved to explain the situation to him again. To help you understand, let me explain in detail. Why do you think I need to take any special action for you?
Why are we strangers? Aren't we a married couple?
Indeed, until 3 days ago, we were, but not anymore.
What are you referring to about 3 days ago?
Taking a heavy sigh internally, I chose to clarify the situation for him. The divorce papers you filled out and handed to me. I swiftly submitted them to the administrative office. So the procedure is complete. Therefore, legally, we're no longer husband and wife.
Why did you do that behind my back?
I'd appreciate it if you were careful with your words. Weren't you the one who got the divorce papers and filled them out?
That was a strategy to persuade you about the inheritance issue.
His attitude and tone, as if he had taken a rightful action, left me in astonishment and disbelief. Regardless, the divorce papers have already been submitted. Legally, we are no longer husband and wife. Furthermore, even if we were, you have absolutely no rights to my inheritance.
How did it come to this? We're still married. I wish you wouldn't be so cold towards me.
I could sense a hint of surprise and hurt in his voice. Robert, how many times do I have to say it? Legally, we aren't husband and wife anymore, and something has been bothering me. I couldn't find the key to the safety deposit box earlier. Did you, by any chance, take it without my permission? Robert remained silent, offering no reply. Well, I've already withdrawn the items I had stored, and I actually plan to terminate that safety deposit box soon. But remember, if you try to take its contents without permission, that could potentially be theft.
I can't believe my own wife would accuse her husband of theft.
I'll say it again, Robert. We're no longer a married couple. True, we might have been when you took the key. I'm thinking of consulting a lawyer about this. As I conveyed this, Robert reacted emotionally over the phone. I can't really understand your attitude right now. I'm hanging up. After ending the call, she immediately blocked his number. Yet, as the night deepened, an unexpected call came through. It was from Robert's parents. She had blocked him, but hadn't considered blocking his parents' numbers.
We've already started the home renovation. Do you plan to just halt it midway? Do you seriously think we'd easily accept such an absurd request?
We've officially requested the contractor for the renovation. Robert has been bragging to people about securing a contract worth $2.7 million.
Secure the necessary funds as soon as possible. If you sincerely apologize, we might still consider accepting you as part of the family.
I was honestly exhausted from the constant complaints of my in-laws. However, I was determined to patiently and quietly listen until they had said everything they wanted to. In fact, while I was busy with the inheritance procedures from my mother, my husband, Robert, had secretly returned to his childhood home and had been advancing with significant renovations. His mindset seemed to be that if he created a new reality by acting first, I would relent and continue our life as before. From our conversations over the phone, I gathered that the demolition of the most dilapidated part of Robert's family home had already been completed.
The belongings that were in the old part of the house are now overflowing into the new rooms. What on earth is going on?
I want you to come over and help with organizing and tidying up.
I was a bit taken aback by their reaction, but I had not made those demands. I have listened to you for a bit now, but if your conversation is over, allow me to say one thing. My divorce with Robert has already been legally finalized. Therefore, there is no legal relationship between you and me anymore. I hope you can understand this. Goodbye. Afterwards, I made up my mind and changed my smartphone settings so I would not receive any more calls from my in-laws. I decided to avoid all contact with Robert and my in-laws, prioritize the safety of my children, and took refuge in a hideaway I had prepared in advance. As I expected, Robert and my in-laws seemed to have visited my house. Surprised to find us not at home, they began to create a commotion and apparently reported us as missing to the police. However, anticipating such an event, I had already consulted a lawyer. I provided the lawyer with all the evidence: the finalized divorce papers, the unauthorized taking of the key to my safety deposit box, and recorded data of phone conversations between Robert, his parents, and myself. Thus, the lawyer explained in detail to the police why I temporarily disappeared to ensure our future safety. Later, a seemingly cornered John and his parents requested that a message for me be written in a letter and delivered through my lawyer. At that time, I asked the letter to be forwarded to a different location. The content of the letter read as follows. Under the current contract with the contractor, we have only started the demolition of the annex, and I have been receiving repeated inquiries about its progress. To be honest, I'm troubled by being asked repeatedly. I admit that I overlooked an important issue, namely, inheritance tax. After paying that tax, the remaining budget will be much less than originally planned. Therefore, I would like to have an urgent discussion with you to plan the reconstruction again. Now that you've lost the mother of your children, the only grandparents for them are my parents. I sincerely hope you won't leave the children alone by severing that important relationship. Looking back on various events, I hope to reaffirm our love as a family and rebuild our relationship with my parents. I believe that the lost affection will gradually return by living together as a family. Following this, there was a surprising statement. We may have different understandings of restrictions or waiting periods for a woman to remarry, but actually, such restrictions don't apply if we, the former couple, remarry. I am seriously considering restoring our bond and rebuilding our home, so I ask for your understanding. Reading the contents of Robert's letter, I mentally shook my head. The letter laid out his expectations and demands towards me, but I had no intention of meeting them. To clearly convey my decision, I communicated my intentions firmly to him through a trusted lawyer. I also informed him that I would have no further involvement with him in the future, and if he tried to approach me, I would report him to the police as a stalker. Later, I learned from the lawyer that Robert was proceeding to resign from his job. He regretted his decision afterward and pleaded for reemployment, but due to bad timing, the company did not accept his request. With his severance pay in hand, Robert chose to return to his hometown. He requested the contractor to stop the construction work he had been progressing with. Although the contractor understood, Robert's reputation in the community was greatly damaged. I heard he's now living a cramped life in his old in-law's house. For myself, I decided to relocate to a distant place to start a new life without letting him or his family know where I am. My job can be done anywhere with an internet connection, so there were no work-related issues in my new location. I felt the advances of modern technology as I started my new life. When I told the children that their father, Robert, was away on business, they accepted the situation more calmly than I expected. I believed that the relationship between father and son was reasonably good. However, on reflection, the bond between Robert and the children might not have been as strong as I thought. Looking back, he spent time with the children only when he felt like it, just as he hadn't really listened to what I said in our conversations. His communication with the children might have been superficial. As for the inheritance from my parents, I intend to treat it as a valuable asset for the children's future. I plan to keep this money in case of emergencies or difficult situations. Ideally, I hope it remains untouched and benefits the children's future. Just as my mother raised me with deep love and practicality, I want to support my children through daily life so they grow up to be earnest adults with firm values.
Didn't you go for a walk with a guy today? Together, you two looked fantastic. Are you two becoming quite close? It was James, my coworker, of course. Sophia, my wife, is undoubtedly aware of that as well. I can't help but blame Sophia because I feel like I could lose control due to this overwhelming sense of emptiness. I remarked sarcastically. Sophia didn't deny it. She said nothing, just glanced down. So, you're essentially stating that I'm correct by remaining silent, huh? I appreciate everything. Be with him, please. Later, I'll mail your belongings. I turned Sophia out of the house after that. An even greater sensation of grief descended upon me when I secured the front door. Since Sophia will be happier living with James, it is likely that she will do so. I went back to the living room and started reading up on the divorce procedure. I told David, my supervisor, that I was leaving the next week. Explaining my predicament and what had transpired was difficult, but I knew I had to do it if I wanted to go on. I completed all of my work while James was out on field work because I didn't want to confront him. Now I have a whole new life ahead of me. I prepare myself to face it. Michael is my name. I work as a systems engineer and am in my 40s. Although Sophia and I are not yet parents, we have been living together contentedly, and I am happy with my life. Since Sophia is around 10 years younger than I am, people frequently make fun of me by remarking that although she appears youthful, I actually have a more immature mindset because of her poise and mature approach. However, my dear wife has recently been in a somewhat difficult predicament. James, a coworker of mine, apparently fell in love with Sophia right away when I invited him around for dinner a while ago. James behaves normally around me, of course, but I just recently found out that he has been covertly contacting her. Sophia once asked me, "Hey, are you pushing yourself to finish work early?" As she gave me a worried look during our supper. I've heard that things are difficult at the moment. She mentioned my work so abruptly, which shocked me, and I had a query. Work has been hectic, to be sure, but Sophia would never be aware of the details. Why would she suddenly say something like that? I questioned her about it. Remember how I once mentioned that James kept contacting me? Sophia asked me, looking disturbed. He told me you're having a difficult time, and he still does. James is known for having troubled relationships. What on earth is he thinking, keeping in contact with the wife of his coworker? I reprimanded Sophia because I was annoyed by his actions. Don't be concerned about my job. Additionally, James only contacts you because you're too kind. It's okay to ignore him. Don't even bother answering. I'm hoping you're not the one contacting him. Of course not, Sophia said, sulking a little, and held up her phone to me. You see, he has never received a message from me. Furthermore, it would only cause tension between you two at work if you ignored him. I'm worried about you more. Sophia is genuinely so kind, wording less about the inconvenience James causes her and more about whether her cold responses might affect my work environment. I appreciated her thoughtfulness, but then I noticed something strange in her text history with James. He'd sent messages claiming I'd made an impossible mistake at work and even said I'd been flirting with female coworkers, which was a total fabrication. What's this about? Sure, things have been hectic at work, but I haven't made any big mistakes or messed around with anyone. As I tried to clear my name, Sophia chuckled softly. Don't worry, I trust you. Why would I believe James's word over yours? If anything, it's shocking he'd think I would. Seeing Sophia pretending to cry in that theatrical way, I let out a relieved laugh. You're right. Once I finished her homemade meal, I felt both full and at ease. Thanks. That was delicious. I'll turn in early tonight to be ready for tomorrow. Sophia smiled softly, saying, Have a good rest, as she began clearing the table. As I coughed, maybe from something getting caught in my throat, Sophia hurried over with a cup of tea. Are you okay? Honestly, you're like a kid. Chew properly before you swallow, all right. She rubbed her stomach as she said this, and I gave her a warning too. Are you constipated again, Sophia? You need to chew properly, or it'll affect your digestion, I said. For a moment, Sophia's expression seemed to twist, but she quickly smiled again, so maybe I imagined it. As she efficiently went about her household chores, I told her good night and headed to the bedroom. The next day at work, I decided to approach James and say something. Good morning. Seems like my wife's been getting a lot of attention from you lately. I appreciate you looking out for her. but she's pretty busy, so maybe take it down a notch. I thought it was a light jab, but James played innocent, acting as if he knew nothing. What are you talking about? I haven't seen Sophia since we had dinner at your place. I couldn't help feeling irritated, so I addressed it more directly. Don't play dumb. You're messaging her every day. You keep this up, and you're going to miss your chance to settle down seriously. James shrugged with a playful expression and waved his hand in front of his face. Oh yeah, that's right. Don't get the wrong idea. I'm not trying to get close to Sophia. Honestly, I'm too busy with other girls and mixers to even think about that. Saying this without a hint of shame, James then continued, I almost forgot. Right, a woman from accounting wanted me to listen to some of her concerns tonight. Michael, want to come along? I don't want people getting the wrong impression with just the two of us out. Considering James's reputation, a one-on-one drink with a female coworker would definitely spark rumors regardless of their intentions. Plus, James's drinking habits aren't the best, so it wouldn't hurt to supervise. I texted Sophia, letting her know I'd be home late due to an urgent matter. We agreed to meet after work. We met at a pub, and I was relieved that her problem was simply feeling left behind amid a surge of marriage-minded friends. Maybe the drinks were getting to him. James suddenly spilled his beer, accidentally soaking her blouse. Are you all right? Let me get a clean towel right away, I said, standing up to help. James handed me a towel. Here, this one's clean. Since I caused it, I'll grab another, he said, standing up to look for a waiter. The female coworker, maybe a bit tipsy, was slowly dabbing at her clothes. I tried to avoid touching her as I wiped down the table and cleaned any lingering moisture on my arm. After a short while, James returned with a few fresh towels. Sorry for the wait. Here, use these. Once things had settled down, we resumed our food and drinks. Both seemed pretty buzzed, but looked like they were just old friends, so I didn't worry. Seeing it was time to wrap up, I picked up the tab and stood up. Thanks for a good evening. I'll be heading out. I'll cover this round, so if you order more, take care of that, all right. I stopped the female coworker from paying and headed to the cashier. Once I had settled the bill, I went straight home. When I got back around 11:00 p.m., normally Sophia would already be asleep, but I noticed the light in the living room was on. Assuming she'd stayed up late, I stepped inside and found her sitting seriously in a chair. I'm back. Were you waiting for me? Sorry for being late, I said. With the TV off, she'd probably been waiting for me to return. I apologized, but Sophia shook her head slowly. I couldn't sleep, thinking things over. I want to trust you, but can you explain this? She said, handing me her phone. I was shocked by what I saw on the screen. It was a picture of me from earlier at the pub. The sender was James. Being photographed wasn't the issue. It was the situation in the image that posed a problem. To anyone else, it looked like I had my hand on the female coworker's body. Of course, knowing the context, I knew there was no issue, but to an outsider, it could easily appear as if we were cozying up. Before I could explain, Sophia scrolled further on the screen. Is this true? I want to hear it straight from you, she said. Seeing the words on her messaging app, I was taken aback even more. The message had read, I spotted him out drinking with a female coworker. He's always close with her. There's no way that's true. James was there too. He wasn't just there by coincidence either. I was invited by him, I protested. Sophia believed me right away, though I knew there must still be some lingering doubts in her mind. Then an idea struck me. I opened my wallet. Sure enough, the receipt listed the number of guests, and it clearly said 3. See? The receipt here shows the number of people. James is playing a seriously twisted prank. I'll talk to him about this tomorrow, I said. As I coughed lightly while saying this, Sophia finally looked relieved. It's just James messing around. But that cough has been dragging on for a while now. Maybe you should get it checked out over the weekend. Anyway, I'll head to bed, Sophia said. After she disappeared into the bedroom, I decided to take a shower. The next day, I confronted James, who, true to form, casually shrugged and said, "I was just kidding around. I didn't think it would turn into such a big deal. It was clearly the kind of prank that could escalate." But James seemed to lack that kind of awareness. I made sure James understood he needed to cut it out, making him promise not to send Sophia any more messages that would cause her concern. That weekend, since my cough hadn't improved, I followed Sophia's advice and went to the doctor. On the way back, as I sat on a bench looking up at the overcast sky, trying to clear my head, an unbelievable scene caught my eye. Across the street, I saw Sophia and James walking together, looking friendly. Curious about where they were headed, I decided to follow them discreetly. They entered a side alley and walked into a building. The sign read "Private Karaoke Rooms." After thinking things over, I sighed and headed back home. A few hours later, Sophia returned, looking cheerful. As I silently watched her, she sat down across from me and asked, "What's wrong? You were out with a guy today, right? You looked really good together. You two seem pretty close, don't you?" I said, referring to James. Surely, Sophia understood that too. On the verge of being consumed by a sense of loss, I couldn't help but accuse her with a bitter tone. Sophia didn't deny it. She simply looked down and stayed silent. "So by staying quiet, you're basically admitting I'm right, aren't you? Thanks for everything. Go be with him if you want. I'll send your stuff over," I said. With that, I sent Sophia out of the house. As I locked the door, an even heavier sadness pressed down on me. Sophia would likely go live with James now. She would undoubtedly be happier that way. Returning to the living room, I started gathering information for the divorce process. The following week, I informed David of my decision to resign. Explaining the situation and what had happened was painful, but I knew it was necessary to move forward. Not wanting to face James, I wrapped up all my tasks while he was out in the field. A completely new life awaited me now. I steeled myself to face it head-on. The apartment felt far too spacious without Sophia. Since I was changing jobs and didn't feel like staying in the same neighborhood, I looked for a smaller, more affordable place. Moving out by myself was both physically taxing and emotionally draining, but I managed. I felt ready to start my new solo life. As I settled into my new place, my cough was finally diagnosed. After 6 months of treatment, I had made a full recovery and found a new job. Life was fulfilling again. Fortunately, I found a coworker who felt like a close friend despite our age difference. His name was Alex, a helpful colleague who'd shown me the ropes since I joined. He was around Sophia's age. Perhaps I chuckled at myself for still measuring things by Sophia, even after the divorce. One day, Alex came to me with an unexpected suggestion. "Michael, you're free this Christmas, right? Want to join me for a mixer?" The sudden proposal made me burst out laughing. "Are you seriously asking if I'm free on Christmas? You're rude." "Well, yeah, I am free, but I'll pass. It'd be boring with an old guy like me. You go have fun with the younger crowd." Alex shook his head and insisted with unusual enthusiasm. "Michael, you're a great conversationalist and a good listener. To tell you the truth, I always end up running the show with these group dates, so I never get to enjoy myself. Michael, I'm counting on you." Seeing Alex put his hands together in a pleading gesture made me smile despite myself. I'd only been going back and forth between work and home lately, so if it would help Alex out, maybe a little change of pace wouldn't be so bad. "All right, I'll join this time, but only for the first round. An older guy like me doesn't have the stamina for more. I'll be heading home after that." When I said this, Alex beamed like a kid. "Thanks, Michael. I owe you one. I'll follow you forever." He was charming, but also a bit of a smooth talker, I felt a bit embarrassed, nearly scratching my head, but I held back. On the day of the mixer, the town was bustling with couples. I headed to the meeting spot in front of the restaurant. Alex and another younger coworker were waiting for me, and we entered together. The women were already seated, but I was stunned to see a completely unexpected person. Sophia was there. After nearly a year of not seeing each other, both Sophia and I couldn't help but act a bit awkwardly. Noticing this, Alex glanced between us and murmured, "Could it be? Do you two know each other? You look like a great-looking couple. What's the story here?" I was momentarily distracted by the strange feeling that something was different about Sophia's hair, so I responded a beat late. Sophia was also looking at me, but when our eyes met, she quickly looked away apologetically. One of the other women, who seemed to know some background, suggested, "Maybe you two should go to a different place to catch up." Alex, likely picking up on the vibe, tried to help out in his own way. He agreed with the woman's suggestion, smiling as he said, "If it's been a while, you must have a lot to catch up on. Go ahead and enjoy yourselves." Going with the flow, Sophia and I ended up leaving together. We chose a restaurant a little farther away where we could sit and have a meal together. "I'm surprised, but are you really okay with coming to something like this? James is not exactly the easygoing type when it comes to jealousy," I commented. Sophia nodded with a slight chuckle. "You're so right. Even back when we were living together, he acted as if I was his girl, even though I had no interest in him." Puzzled by her words, I couldn't help but ask a more probing question. "So, how are things with James? Are you two not getting along?" Sophia laughed and answered, "Getting along? There's nothing between me and James. He still won't stop pestering me, and it's exhausting trying to avoid him." I had assumed they'd been living together, so her answer left me speechless. Sensing my reaction, Sophia said, "Actually," and began to explain. Rubbing her stomach, Sophia revealed she'd been experiencing mysterious abdominal pain and had gone to the hospital for tests. It was then she discovered she was facing a serious illness. If she pursued treatment, she wouldn't be able to have children. She had struggled with that decision. She knew I'd always wanted kids, and she herself had been hoping to start a family soon, so it was a huge blow. Feeling that she couldn't fulfill my hopes if we stayed married, she started blaming herself. After agonizing over it, Sophia concluded it would be better for me if we separated. That's when, with some guilt, she decided to involve James in her plan. On the day I went to the hospital, Sophia and James had intentionally planned to walk by right where I'd see them. They had orchestrated it together to make it easier for me to bring up divorce. Apparently, Sophia had told James, "I have no intention of dating you. I just want to separate from my husband." But since the divorce was convenient for James as well, he gladly agreed to help. After she explained everything, Sophia looked at me, her eyes full of concern. "More importantly, could it be that you are?" Seeing her worried expression, I smiled and reassured her. "I'm fine." In truth, I had also been diagnosed with a serious illness, just as she had. The cough that wouldn't go away had led me to get checked. Fortunately, it was caught early, but at the time, I was filled with anxiety, not knowing what the future held. Even if we'd had children, I might not have been able to be there to raise them, and that would have left Sophia to bear the burden alone. That wouldn't have been fair to her or to the child. At the time, when I was struggling with these doubts, I happened to see Sophia and James walking together, looking close. Half out of a sense of resignation, I convinced myself that stepping aside was the best way for Sophia to be happy. But after learning that Sophia had been carrying her own burdens, I realized how much we had lacked communication and felt regret. Reflecting on this, I asked Sophia, "You noticed my illness because of my hair, didn't you? Looks like we're in the same boat." I'd felt something was off when I saw Sophia after so long. I realized she was wearing a wig. She must have immediately recognized my hair as artificial, just as I had with hers. After my hair loss due to the treatment's side effects, I'd gained an almost instinctive ability to tell natural hair from wigs, a sensitivity many people with similar experiences seem to develop. As we talked, the misunderstandings between Sophia and me dissolved, and it felt like our previous closeness was coming back. While we were enjoying our meal together, a man suddenly sat down at our table. It was hard to get you to make time, so I came to see you myself. Imagine my surprise finding you having dinner with your ex-husband on Christmas, James said in an unsettling tone. Sophia had told me James was still pestering her, but I hadn't expected him to show up here. But how did he know we were here? Curious, I asked James, "How did you find us? We didn't plan to come here, so there's no way you'd know." I glanced at Sophia, who looked just as confused. James smirked, raising one corner of his mouth as he replied, "It's none of your business. But fine, I'll tell you. When I borrowed Sophia's phone the other day, I installed a location tracking app. We're close enough to share our phones, you know." Upon hearing this, Sophia quickly checked her phone, looking distressed. Her face turned pale as she found what he was referring to. "Is this it? How dare you do something like this without my permission?" Sophia, rarely one to show much emotion, was visibly angry. Even James looked taken aback. He scrambled to make excuses, trying to cover it up. "When you left your phone on the table to go to the restroom, I figured. I mean, we're close, so there's no need to be so upset, right?" At this, Sophia finally seemed to reach her limit. "Just leave, and don't ever show up in front of us again." "I want to try again with Michael," she said. Then she took my hand and stood up. As we left, I glanced back to see James sitting at the table with a devastated expression on his face. Sophia has since consulted an attorney of James' behavior. The investigation has uncovered various stalking behaviors, like tampering with her mail and following her, and it's likely he will face some form of punishment. According to a former coworker, James' misconduct had reached his boss, David, and the company had begun to view it as a serious issue. Female employees, in particular, had started to openly avoid him, and reports of his inappropriate behavior continued to pile up. Uncomfortable with the situation, James eventually disappeared from the company. Though he may feel safe from work repercussions, his actions towards Sophia could result in criminal charges. Installing a GPS app on someone's phone without consent can lead to up to 3 years in prison or a fine of up to $5,000. Though he faces a difficult road, I hope he learns from this and refrains from selfish, unethical actions in his future work. After many discussions, Sophia and I have remarried. We learned the importance of open communication and not keeping secrets. Now, we make an effort to consult each other even on small matters, building a relationship of mutual support. Thankfully, both of us have shown no signs of illness recurrence, and we spend our weekends actively, often traveling. From here on, I believe Sophia and I will support each other through anything life brings. We made a promise to cherish our health and live each day with gratitude. It looked terrible, so I threw it away. "I did that for you, I was confused by what was said. Haha. Mark Anderson, my employer, frequently harasses me and my staff. I had put up with it up until now, but this time I couldn't forgive him. Is it true that he tossed away the ugly-looking lunch that my dear wife had made for me? The vegetable-filled one, so pitifully impoverished. Eating such things won't make you stronger. A man ought to consume meat. It was for your own benefit. It's the end of your life," Mark replied. Mark went on without realizing my rage, and I told him icily that it was time to make him understand whose lunch he had thrown away. "Why does the lunch my daughter made in the trash?" I inquired. "Daughter." Just then, a bystander, Chairman Hayes, went pale and came up to us. This aggressive boss's well-earned demise started with this incident, which marked a turning point in his career. I'm a 27-year-old employee named Jason. Sarah, my wife, is a stay-at-home mom. Last year, Sarah and I got married like any other couple. Sarah, you look cute today. Stop it. Every time I say cute, I can't help but think my wife, who is 3 years younger, is adorable. I think Sarah's hesitant smile is beautiful. I'd rather not go to work. Sarah is the one I want to be with. Jason, you have to go to work, you know. I unintentionally annoy Sarah by saying things like that. I sincerely appreciate how Sarah calms me down and sends me on my way. She made it possible for me to get to work. I made a delicious lunch, so do your best. Every time I whine about not wanting to go to work, Sarah gives me a freshly baked lunch. As always, thank you. I'd accept it and head out, saying, I'll look forward to lunch and do my best. To be honest, my feet hurt as I walk to work, but I do it for Sarah, who is waiting for me to get back. Actually, I was worried about something that I hadn't yet told my wife, Sarah. Go to work if you have time to spout gibberish. You guys are just good at working. The worst environment in the department has been brought about by the recently assigned Mark's harassment and sarcasm. Naturally, he would dump his own work on subordinates. After assigning irrational duties, he would yell, "Too slow. You're finished. Is there nothing you can do correctly?" The staff were experiencing emotional and bodily distress as a result of the constant harassment. Because of Mark's constant shouting, everyone was on edge. Here we were all, growing more and more worn out in such a setting. Jason, come here. I seem to be the target today. Mark was going to give me an unreasonable reprimand. Jason, why haven't you prepared the materials for today's meeting? I was suddenly yelled at by Mark. Taken aback, I asked, Meeting materials? What was he talking about? I hadn't received any instructions to prepare such materials. Besides, I hadn't even heard about a meeting today. Being proactive is the basic principle of a working professional. Mark started spouting nonsense. Being proactive. If he thinks so, why couldn't he prepare it himself? How am I supposed to prepare for a meeting I didn't even know existed? Had the materials ready for the meeting starting at 1:30 p.m., he said. I checked the time. It was around 11 o'clock a.m. now. Looks like I would have to skip lunch break to get this work done. Reluctantly, I started working on the materials. This meeting required past documents, so I gathered what I needed and secluded myself in the records room. At 12:30 p.m., during lunch break, I thought I could just make it in time and return to my desk. What? It's gone. Why? But my precious lunch was missing. I searched in my bag, on my desk, and in the surrounding area, but the lunch was nowhere to be found. I definitely received it in the morning and came to work with it, so it couldn't just disappear. What are you looking around for, Jason? There was Mark, smirking as he approached me. Had you finished preparing the documents? I've gathered all the necessary materials, so I just need to put them together. Seemingly dissatisfied with my response, Mark clicked his tongue, but soon smirked again. Looking for something? My lunchbox is missing, I answered honestly when he asked. Oh, that. I threw it away. What? You threw it away? I involuntarily raised my voice in disbelief. What did he just say? He threw away my lunch. That pathetic lunch full of vegetables and looking poor. Eating that won't give you any strength. A man should eat meat. I did it thinking of your well-being, Mark said, smirking as he spoke. I was so angry I felt like I could explode. I could feel my clenched fists trembling. Your life is over, I thought. Ha! It was then, as I coldly confronted Mark, that someone interrupted. Excuse me for a moment. Oh, Chairman Hayes. Chairman Hayes walked in at that moment, his face ashen, and he was holding a wrapped item in his hand. I recognized the wrapping. It was the wrap for the lunchbox I had brought. That's my lunchbox. Thank you. Where did you find it? I asked as I received the lunchbox. It was in the trash can in the hallway. He really threw it away. Upon hearing Chairman Hayes' answer, I looked at Mark. Mark's face turned pale at the arrival of Chairman Hayes, but he tried to cover it up with a forced smile. Did you, by any chance, throw away Jason's lunch? For what reason? Jason always brings his lunch, but it always looks unappetizing, so I was worried. I thought it would be terrible if he fell ill eating such food. It's unfortunate if someone is bad at cooking, but it's better to make a lunch that looks more appealing. It was out of kindness, you see. Mark tried to justify his actions. An appetizing, bad at cooking. Such words reignited the anger I had been trying to suppress. It seemed Chairman Hayes felt the same way. As I was about to speak in anger, Chairman Hayes gestured for me to be quiet and began speaking calmly. It seems you have a sophisticated hobby of peeking into others' lunches and criticizing them. Chairman Hayes coldly uttered his sarcastic remark. Mark grimaced in response. He always eats it so proudly, it's hard not to notice. I would brag too if my beautiful, lovely, and wonderful wife woke up early in the morning to make me such a lunch. I found myself reflexively responding to Mark's words. That's how much I treasure Sarah. Be quiet, Chairman Hayes said, smiling kindly, signaling me to stop. Yes, sorry. I apologized internally. Then, Chairman Hayes turned his gaze back to Mark. What about Jason's lunch made you think it looked unappetizing? Little meat, mostly vegetables, the rice was brown, and it looked messy. Mark responded disparagingly to Chairman Hayes' inquiry. If Chairman Hayes hadn't been there, I might have punched him. I see. Then let me make something clear. Huh? Clear? Mark looked confused, obviously unaware that he had made an enemy of a significant person. The person who gets up early in the morning to make this lunch with all her effort is my daughter. Jason is my daughter's husband. Why is my daughter's lunch in the trash? Daughter. Mark stood dumbfounded as the truth was revealed. It's Sarah. I'm starting work here from today. Hello. I look forward to working with you. I met my wife, Sarah, when she joined a company as a new employee. She began working without revealing she was the chairman's daughter. I was assigned to be her mentor. Sarah, you're quick to learn. Is that so? Thank you. I took good care of her, not just as a mentor, but as a senior colleague. Sarah was a capable new employee and soon needed little help. Then, one time, Sarah made a mistake at work. This is my fault for not supervising properly. I apologized alongside her and worked hard to rectify the mistake. Eventually, we managed to fix it and celebrated our hard work. Jason, I'm really sorry for this time. It's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. As a new employee, just be careful not to repeat this same mistake. When you become a senior, help your juniors if they're in trouble. That's the secret to a successful company, as I was taught by my seniors. Later, I learned that Sarah was impressed by what I said that day. From then on, our relationship grew closer. Sarah, about this copy. Yes, what about it? It looks like you got the front and back mixed up. The paper came out blank. Oh, I'm so sorry. I always thought Sarah, who seemed competent yet somewhat naive and clueless about the world, needed someone to look after her. I found myself instinctively watching over her, ready to help at any moment. Sarah, you should drink more. Hey, seniors, don't just bother the young lady. Pay some attention to me too. At company drinking parties, I would shield Sarah from being pressured to drink too much, sometimes getting drunk myself in the process. Sarah grew fond of me and would report to me whenever something happened. Jason, I found a nice restaurant the other day. Would you like to go with me? If it's Sarah's recommendation, definitely. Our conversations ranged from work to personal matters. Our dinners progressed from a few times a month to once a week. Gradually, our relationship grew closer. Jason and Sarah really make a great couple. They only have eyes for each other. There's no room for anyone else. It's nice to be close, but don't make out at work. Before we knew it, we were an officially recognized couple within the company. Then one day, Chairman Hayes approached me. "You're Jason, right?" "Yes, that's me." "I need to talk to you. Come with me." Not understanding what Chairman Hayes wanted to speak with me about, I followed him, worried about what I might have done. "Dad? Dad?" I looked in the direction of the voice and saw Sarah. "Dad, what's going on? Do you need something from Jason?" "Yes, well, it's something that concerns Sarah as well. Come along." That was when I first learned that Sarah was the chairman's only daughter. Sarah is the chairman's daughter. I kept it a secret. I didn't want to be seen as the chairman's daughter. I wanted to work as a regular employee. I'm sorry for hiding it until now. She had apparently gone through the interview process without revealing her identity as the chairman's daughter, and thus she was hired as Sarah and assigned to my department. Indeed, if everyone knew she was the chairman's daughter, they would have treated her differently. I might have also cared for her in a different way. Sarah is an excellent employee who delivers results in her work, regardless of being the chairman's daughter. Really, thank you. Well, she's a bit of a scatterbrain, though. That is, I'm trying to improve, but you didn't have to say that in front of my father. As I shared my honest opinion, Sarah smiled happily. I was drawn to her smile, even as I inadvertently said something extra. It was our usual banter, but this time it wasn't her colleagues who were nearby, but her father. Chairman Hayes, realizing this, looked at me with a stern expression. "It's too early for marriage. I won't allow it." I was stunned by Chairman Hayes' words. Indeed, I was aware of my feelings for Sarah, but Sarah and I are not dating. Huh. When they clarified that we weren't even dating yet, Chairman Hayes looked surprised. It turned out that there were rumors at the company that Sarah and I were about to get married, and Chairman Hayes had come to lay down the law after hearing them. In reality, our close interactions had led people to believe the rumors were true, so he had addressed the topic of marriage. But I do think Sarah is a wonderful woman, and I would like to date her. Seizing the opportunity, I declared my intentions to Chairman Hayes and then turned to Sarah. "Sarah, will you go out with me?" At first, Sarah looked surprised by my proposal. Ha ha ha. I've never seen someone propose in front of their parent before. She laughed. "Indeed, Jason, you're too much," Sarah said, bursting into laughter. I couldn't help but join her in laughter. "Fine. Do as you like." Chairman Hayes finally gave in, seemingly disarmed by his daughter's reaction. Soon after, I received a positive response from Sarah, and we started dating. The fact that we weren't actually dating until then surprised many at the company. "You're giving off such a sweet vibe, and you weren't even dating," they would say. When I admitted it was all unconscious, my colleagues teased me mercilessly. After a while, we decided to get married. "It's too soon," Chairman Hayes exclaimed. Well, everyone said we were taking too long. Chairman Hayes was the only one opposed. No matter if it's 5 years or 20 years, you're going to say the same thing, right? No matter how many years pass, Dad will always say it's too soon for marriage. If I listen to him every time, I'll never get married. Sarah and her mother brushed him off. Officially, I remember Chairman Hayes looking flustered and isolated. "I think Jason is a fine young man, but marriage might still be too soon," he said. "If you think he's a good person, then just accept it," Sarah's mother said. "If you're going to be so mean, I won't let you hold your grandchild," Sarah added. "That's well. There, you two," Chairman Hayes said, clearly flustered. I found myself stepping in to mediate. His wife sure is a strong person. My mother also had a way of keeping my father in check. Is it a case of strong mothers, perhaps? Anyway, after persistently appealing to Chairman Hayes, he finally gave his blessing for our marriage. Half a year later, we had our wedding. If Dad had accepted sooner, we could have been married earlier, Sarah lamented. It just shows how precious you are to him, I replied. The company accepted us before your own father did. I occasionally have drinks with Chairman Hayes in private. It seems that intervening back then worked out in my favor. It's a relief. Women in my family are stronger than me, he commented during a drinking session. This helped me establish a reasonably close relationship with Chairman Hayes. Sorry, Jason, don't worry about it. Take your time learning. Sarah wasn't very skilled at household chores. Having lived at her parents' house all her life, where her mother, a homemaker, did all the household chores, Sarah never had to do them herself. She had only ever helped out a bit, and since I had a long history of living alone, I was actually better at housework. Thank you, but I feel bad leaving everything to Jason. I need to learn quickly, Sarah said. Despite this, Sarah earnestly began learning to manage the household. Even so, her cooking skills didn't improve much. Oh, it turned black again. Well, that's common at the beginning. Don't worry, let's try adjusting the heat a little next time. Thus, she practiced by getting up early to make lunch every morning. The lunch she handed me was the result of her efforts. Indeed, it was mostly vegetables, but the once messy dishes were now neatly arranged, and the once burnt omelette, though slightly crumbled, now looked appetizingly yellow. Sarah is improving day by day with her persistent efforts. Every day, she studies cooking and researches how to make it better. Knowing her efforts, I couldn't forgive Mark for his words. How can you say such things without considering the effort of the person who made it? What are you, some kind of critic? I said. Chairman Hayes also knew of his daughter's efforts in cooking. He mentioned buying her cooking books and recording videos of his wife cooking for her. She did not have any knowledge of housework, and he seemed to feel guilty about it. It was typical of Chairman Hayes to have kept her sheltered, not even letting her handle a knife because it was dangerous. She told me, I've improved, so I want Dad to try it too. I'm really looking forward to eating it, she said, genuinely excited about receiving her lunch. Someday, however, preparing lunch for two was still a burden for Sarah, who was not yet accustomed to cooking. Chairman Hayes himself didn't want to put undue pressure on her. Therefore, once a week, she made an extra portion for her father, which I delivered during my lunch break. Today wasn't one of those days, but he sometimes came by to check on us. He apparently found my lunchbox in the trash on his way here. I didn't know that. Upon hearing our story, Mark started to make excuses. You think just because you didn't know, it's okay to throw away someone's lunch? Chairman Hayes shouted at him. His loud voice drew the attention of everyone around. This is a good opportunity I have. Something to ask. Everyone was seizing the moment with the gathering crowd when Chairman Hayes addressed them. I heard Mark has been harassing Jason, a subordinate. Has anyone else been harassed by him or witnessed it? Speak up. Now's the time. The employees exchanged glances, unsure. I was pushed to do extra work by Mark, one employee said, as if having made up their mind. Following that, other employees also began to speak up, one after another. He made me run errands to the grocery store, and he didn't pay for it. He waged war on me right before leaving. Mark made me cover for his mistakes, one after another. Mark's wrongdoings came to light. Almost everyone there had experienced his harassment. They used the opportunity to voice their complaints to Chairman Hayes. So how will you explain this? Chairman Hayes asked. Mark glared at his subordinates, but he was outmatched, intimidated by their stares. Mark was pressured into silence. I too glared at him. Mark, hand over your work immediately and take a leave of absence. Your punishment will be decided later, Chairman Hayes declared. Mark knelt down on the spot, utterly dumbfounded, hanging his head in defeat. No one approached or spoke to him in that moment. Afterward, he left the scene as if his soul had departed from him. I picked up the lunchbox that had been thrown in the trash. Fortunately, the lunchbox, wrapped in a cloth, wasn't dirty. Relieved, I sat at my desk and opened the lunchbox. "Let's eat," I said, and I began to eat. Jason, Chairman Hayes, and the other employees looked at me in surprise. I smiled at everyone. It's fine. I don't want to waste what my wife made because of such nonsense. With that, I continued eating my lunch. Yes, the lunch Sarah had worked hard to make was truly delicious. "Haha, you really are something." Chairman Hayes watched me with a smile. His smile seemed to spread to the other employees as they, too, chuckled softly. "Welcome home," Sarah greeted me with a smile when I got home. "I heard you had a tough day. Well done." "You know about it?" I was a bit surprised at her remark. "Your father called and told me everything." "Thank you for eating the lunch," she said. According to Sarah, Chairman Hayes had called her and explained everything about Mark and how I ate the lunch that was once thrown away. He also said, "You married a good man." I was taken aback by those words. Chairman Hayes, a man shy of praise, would never say such things directly to me. That's great. I couldn't hide my joy at receiving such rare praise from my father-in-law. I hope he's starting to recognize me a bit. I placed my hand on Sarah's belly. I need to work hard as a father, too, I muttered to myself. There was a tiny life growing inside Sarah's belly. In fact, we were expecting twins. She had severe morning sickness and was at risk of a miscarriage, so she had quit her job. Mark had been assigned to the company after she had resigned. Now, in this stable period, she wanted to move her body and was actively doing housework. I worry about her, but I also believe it's important not to be overly protective, so I let her do things her way. Thank you, as always, Sarah. I'm the one who should be thanking you. I'm truly grateful to my wife for making lunches every day, especially considering her condition during pregnancy. When I express my gratitude, Sarah responds with a smile. Her cooking skills are still a bit shaky, but they're improving. What happened, Sarah? I think I got the water ratio wrong. The rice is all mushy. We could cook it again, but let's make it into porridge this time. Sometimes she still gets the rice-water ratio wrong. After dinner, we enjoy a quiet, peaceful time together. I wonder how much cuter they will be when they are born, considering how adorable they are now. As I laugh, Sarah laughs too. It's going to be tough, but that also means twice the cuteness and happiness today. Twice the fun and joy too. We talked about various things for our future. I thought it was a very happy time. I believe our future will surely be a happy one. Meanwhile, Mark faced a grim fate after the incident. Mark was judged to be malevolent and demoted to a branch office. That branch was rumored to have a heavy workload, and he had to start new from the bottom. But since he had always dumped his work on his subordinates, he was nearly incompetent himself. He resigned after being mentally weakened by daily scolding from a younger boss and the intense workload. The mistreatment he had meted out to his subordinates came back to haunt him. It was a fitting example of reaping what you sow. Chairman Hayes was determined to prevent Mark from ever facing us again, so I likely never saw him again. Incidentally, I was appointed to fill the now vacant managerial position. If Jason is the boss, we can feel secure. Thank you. I'll do my best. I plan to take lessons from Mark's example and cherish my subordinates. With his departure, the atmosphere in the department improved significantly. Everyone could work more energetically without fear. However, I'm now in a position of responsibility. There is a weight to it, but I can overcome it, thanks to Sarah's lunches, which she prepares while waiting for my return. Sarah, you did so well. We have cute and healthy twins. Time passed, and Sarah safely gave birth to twins. They were a boy and a girl, both incredibly cute. Both sets of grandparents came to celebrate the birth. They were absolutely adorable. My parents complimented how cute the twins were and comforted Sarah. They also advised me to support Sarah firmly. Chairman Hayes was completely enamored with his grandchildren. His wife, while comforting Sarah, had a bittersweet smile on her face. Dad, Sarah seemed a bit overwhelmed by her father's reaction. I smiled, feeling blissful. I'm happy with my family. I'm really glad that these people are my family. Let's name them Nathan and Emily. Yes, let's give them lots of love. Sarah, and I want to show our children the same love our parents showed us. We want to play a lot with them, learn a lot together, and create many memories. We want to shower them with love every day so they can always be happy and smiling. I think that's also a way of showing filial piety. From now on, Sarah, Nathan, Emily, and I will create a family full of laughter. Just like our parents and in-laws showered us with love, we will pour our love into these children. As I say this, our parents nod with smiles. I can truly feel how happy I am right now. I want to firmly protect this happiness. When I go to work, everyone congratulates me. When I inadvertently show them photos of the kids, everyone says how cute they are. Odd. Don't brag about their cuteness at work, okay, Jay? Especially since Mark left. You've been bragging about how cute your wife is. I'm sorry about that, I reply with a wry smile. Right, I should restrain myself from now on. With Mark gone, the atmosphere became warm enough to joke around. In this environment, I'll work hard for Sarah and our 2 children. I'm home. Welcome back. Returning home, I'm greeted by the 3 of them. At home, I'm actively involved in childcare. Taking care of twins is indeed twice as hard, but the joy is also double. During the day, both Sarah's mother and my mother often come to help. We're really grateful for their help. That's true, but as a dad, I need to take care of them too. Don't overdo it. You're working hard too. Don't overdo it yourself, Sarah. We chit-chat while changing diapers. As a couple, we need to work together. By the way, our fathers are also helping out a lot. They actively hold and comfort the babies. Moreover, they bring so many things when they visit that we hardly have to buy anything ourselves. Oh, look. More diapers have been bought. Yes, your father brought them with both hands full. I'm truly grateful. But it's a bit weird how much they dote on the grandkids. Sarah is still quite strict with her father. I understand the feeling of doting, and maybe I should have a chat with him about it sometime. They really are adorable. Truly, I wonder what kind of adults they'll become. Our beloved children sleep peacefully. Together with Sarah, I gently stroke them. I want to protect them. I truly felt this from the bottom of my heart. Our little ones are still fragile. Their future holds countless possibilities. They might become salarymen like me, or perhaps athletes or doctors. The possibilities for their future are endless. I want to do what's necessary to protect their future. But they're surely going to be kind children because you, Jason, are kind. And if they take after me, they might be a bit clumsy. That's not true. If they're like Sarah, they'll be strong-willed, though maybe a bit absent-minded. Oh, I've gotten much better than before. Sarah laughs at my words, and her smile brightens up. I think about how we should continue to support each other and laugh together as a family. I'll compensate you handsomely if you can solve even one. We'll see. I'll comply with your request. Rachel, a beautiful former classmate who later became Miss Tokyo University, put me to the test with 3 challenging riddles at the middle school reunion. She sneered at me with mockery, obviously criticizing me as someone who only completed middle school, as if she didn't like me even at school. It was clear from her expression that she didn't think I had any chance. However, I apologize. I've already figured them all out. What? Actually, she froze in shock when she heard the truth about me. What sort of prize should I request now? Taryn is my name. I'm a 30-year-old office worker who is completely normal. I've been back in my hometown for the first time in 15 years today. A feeling of nostalgia came in as I walked down streets that had seen significant transformation. Before I knew it, I had reached my target for the day. I haven't seen anyone since we graduated, so I suppose it's normal to feel a little anxious. I returned today because of a middle school reunion. It seems that several of the more gregarious classmates planned it, using the 15-year mark as justification. It implies that she had to be involved as well. Oh, she was Rachel, a classmate of mine in middle school. Rachel's father was the chief executive officer of a corporation that was so well known in the community that everyone knew who he was. Rachel, his daughter, was the epitome of the affluent girl. She was also intelligent, athletic, and incredibly beautiful. A lady so perfect that it was more difficult to find fault with her than to appreciate her strengths. I always thought she lived in a different universe and had nothing to do with me because of all those characteristics. For that reason, I never tried to engage with her. However, I had been perplexed by two aspects of Rachel since middle school. To start, what made her go to the same school as me? I attended a normal public middle school with no notable prestige or entrance examinations. It was strange that someone like Rachel would go to such a school, considering her stellar grades and the prestige of her family. Second, why was she so unrelenting in her criticism of me? It wasn't merely lighthearted banter. How do you even manage to score that low? She would ask scathingly. You should teach me the secret, or you're weak in addition to being a lousy student. How pitiful. She would deliberately give challenging questions that I was unable to answer, then make fun of me when I was unable to do so. However, oddly, this always occurred when no one else was around. Who knows, maybe that was her way of maintaining appearances. Furthermore, there were times when she would give me a gaze that was almost hateful. I could have just asked her why back then, but honestly, with someone so hostile, what good would it have done? Since this reunion was planned by the popular kids, it was almost certain Rachel would be there. With a mix of anxiety about her potential hostility and curiosity about her true intentions, I headed to the venue. When I stepped inside, over 20 people had already arrived, and the room was lively. Despite being a little early, this atmosphere feels nostalgic. Though I can't recognize anyone, as I scanned the room, a striking sight caught my attention. A woman surrounded by a crowd, exuding elegance that could rival a movie star. It took me a second to realize who she was, but watching her interact with the others quickly jogged my memory. Rachel, still the same. No, even more graceful now. Every move she makes feels like a scene from a drama. She still seems like someone from another world. As I thought this, Rachel noticed me. After excusing herself from the group, she approached me. Taryn, right? Long time no see. Yeah, it's been a while. Do you remember me? Rachel, right? Spotting me and coming over so suddenly. What's this about? You're as cold as ever, she said. Well, whatever. There's something I've wanted to ask you if we ever met again. Something to ask me. Yeah, near the end of middle school. Why did you suddenly stop coming to school? Hearing her question, memories from 15 years ago came rushing back to me. I didn't want to remember it, those bitter memories I had tried so hard to forget. The reason I stopped going to school near the end of middle school lay in both family circumstances and myself. My father ran a small diner in our town. It wasn't wildly successful, but it was beloved by the local regulars. Originally, my father ran the diner by himself, but when I was young, he remarried. After that, my father and my stepmother managed the business together. However, everything changed when a shopping mall opened nearby. Already struggling with declining customers, our diner was dealt a fatal blow. By the time I was in the 3rd year of middle school, My parents decided to close the diner and move back to the countryside to help my grandparents with farming. My father explained that the mall's presence had made it impossible to keep the business afloat. But a few days after they decided to close the diner, I overheard a conversation between my parents that revealed the real reason. "Hey, are you sure about closing the diner? We still have loyal customers." "Yeah, I wish we didn't have to close. There are people who love our food." "Then why?" "But it's true that we're losing business. That mall will only get bigger, and when it does, we'll lose even more customers. Keeping the diner open just isn't realistic anymore. And besides, there's Taryn to think about." "You're right, his episodes have been more frequent lately." I'd had a chronic condition since I was a kid. That said, it wasn't anything serious enough to require hospitalization. It was manageable as long as I took the proper medication. But by the time I reached my 3rd year of middle school, my symptoms had worsened, and I started missing school frequently. That's why moving to a more rural environment will be better. There's a good doctor there too. It's the right time to make this change. It's hard to say goodbye, but for Terrence's sake, it's the best choice. And so my family moved to the countryside right after I graduated middle school. By the end of the school year, my condition had deteriorated to the point where I stopped going to school altogether. It hit me hard when I realized I was the reason they had to close the diner. The guilt was unbearable. I couldn't bring myself to say anything to my parents, so I just cried under the covers, silently apologizing to them over and over. Because of my condition, I didn't go on to high school. I also had a younger brother at the time. He was only in his 1st year of middle school. I felt awful about uprooting him too and apologized constantly for dragging him into our move, but he never once complained. In fact, he went out of his way to help our parents with their work on his days off. Eventually, my brother started his own agricultural business to support the family, and now that my condition has mostly cleared up, I work there as one of his employees. That's why these memories aren't ones I like revisiting. After all the trouble I caused, I'd rather not dwell on this. I'll just dodge the question. Well, it was a mix of personal reasons. Nothing worth sharing, really. Huh. I see. I thought maybe you ran off somewhere to avoid me. So, which high school did you go to? I didn't go to high school. Oh, really? Talking to me when no one else is around and barely reacting to what I say. Some things never change, even after 15 years. To be honest, I didn't think you'd show up to the reunion. So in a way, I got lucky. What do you mean? I'm glad we got to meet again. Oh, looks like my friends are calling me. See you later. With a cold glance, Rachel briskly walked away after saying that. Glad we got to meet again. Her expression doesn't match her words, and she keeps asking me all these questions. What's she really thinking? Although Rachel's behavior bothered me, I decided it wasn't worth overthinking and chose to focus on enjoying the reunion. Fortunately, a few friends I was close to back in middle school were there, so I didn't have to spend the event as a lonely outcast. As we reminisced about old times, the conversation inevitably turned to Rachel. Apparently, she went to a prestigious high school, then got into the University of Tokyo. She even became Miss Tokyo University. Well, she was always smart, and her looks were never in question, so that's not really surprising. What is surprising, though, is how little her attitude toward me has changed. Not wanting to ruin the mood, I played along and nodded politely as they talked about her. After about 15 minutes of reminiscing about middle school stories, the group temporarily disbanded, and Rachel approached me again. Hey, can you solve this? With that, Rachel handed me 3 sheets of paper. Each one had some sort of problem written in English, German, and French. Here we go again, I thought. I'd hoped she'd grown out of this childish behavior. Back in middle school, she pulled stunts like this countless times. I couldn't tell if she was drunk on her own academic success or if she just enjoyed looking down on people less capable than herself. But every time, She challenged me with problems designed to be unsolvable for me. If I struggled or failed to solve them, the pattern was always the same. She'd mock and belittle me. As another unpleasant memory from those days flashed through my mind, Rachel smirked and spoke. If you solve even one, I'll do whatever you want. Heck, I'll even give myself to you as a reward. Ridiculous. Her condescending attitude is way too obvious, I thought, letting out a sigh. Seeing that, Rachel's expression grew even more pleased. Well, too hard for you to solve. No, I've already solved them all. The answer to the English problem is 48 kilometers per hour. The German one is 1%, and the French one is the 25th page. What? How? Don't get so flustered. Let me explain it all for you. The problem written in English described a boy driving a car from his house to a neighboring town and back. He traveled at a speed of 40 kilometers/h on the way there and 60 kilometers/h on the way back. The question was to calculate the average speed of the entire trip. You probably thought I'd just take 40 plus 60, divided by 2, and say the answer is 50 kilometers/a, didn't you? But the calculation is straightforward. Since we don't know the exact distance, let's assume the shortest common denominator, 120 kilometers, as the distance to the town. On the way there, it takes 120 fortieths, which equals 3 hours. On the way back, it's 120 sixtieths, which equals 2 hours. Now we have enough information. The total distance is 240 kilometers, and the total time is 5 hours. Divide the distance by the time, and you get 48 kilometers/h. Next up, the German problem. Another trick question, right? The problem written in German was a probability question. It described a virus that infects 1 in 10,000 people and a test that can detect the virus with 99% accuracy. The question was, if the test result indicates that someone is infected, what is the actual probability that they are indeed infected? This one's designed to make you think the answer is 99%, right? I could already picture you mocking me if I'd said that. You just need to think in concrete numbers. Let's assume a population of 1 million. If 1 in 10,000 people is infected, that means there are 100 infected individuals in this population. With the test being 99% accurate, 99 out of those 100 infected people will correctly test positive, while 1 will incorrectly test negative. The same logic applies in reverse. Among the 999,900 uninfected people, 1% or 99,999 will be mistakenly identified as positive. Got it so far? Oh yeah, so let's break it down. The total number of people who tested positive is 99 plus 99,999, which gives us 10,098. That's our denominator. Out of these, only 99 are actually infected. Now it's just a simple division, 99/10,098, which is roughly 0.01. So the actual probability is 1%, correct? Finally, the French one. You really went out of your way to make this one tedious. The last problem, written in French, was quite simple in concept. It described a book with 1 torn page. The sum of the page numbers of the remaining intact pages was 15,000. The question was, which page was torn from the book? There wasn't much information to go on, so I started by estimating the total number of pages. I'd use the handy formula for the sum of numbers from 1 to n, which is an equals 1/2 n plus 1. I set that 15,000 is approximately equal to 1/2 n plus 1. Solving for n, I got roughly 173.04 or 174 pages. Following so far? Yes? Then it's just a matter of plugging in the numbers. If the book has 173 pages, n equals 173, so the total page sum is 15,515. Thus, the sum of the torn page numbers is 15,515 to 15,000, which equals 51. Assume the torn page is x, with its reverse side being x plus 1. Solve x plus 1 equals 51, and you get x equals 25. Since pages are always printed as pairs, front and back, the torn pages are 25 and 26. So the answer is page 25. But what if the book had 174 pages? Didn't you consider that possibility? There's no need to. If the book had 174 pages, the torn pages would be 112 and 113, based on the same calculation. However, books are bound so that odd-numbered pages are on one side and even-numbered pages are on the other. If pages 112 and 113 were torn, it would mean 2 sheets were missing, which contradicts the problem. This kind of oversight wouldn't slip past me. After finishing my explanation, Rachel stood frozen, white-eyed, as though she couldn't believe I'd solved them all. She must have been planning to humiliate me after finding out I didn't go to high school. What a pointless, childish game. As I thought about this, Rachel finally collected herself and spoke. Wow, that's amazing. I didn't think you'd solve them so quickly. Did you go to college by any chance? Yeah, which one? Harvard. At that moment, I could tell not just Rachel, but everyone around us had started murmuring in shock. Well, I did tell them I didn't go to high school, so it's only natural they'd be a bit surprised. What followed was an onslaught of questions from everyone, far more than I'd anticipated. The reunion eventually ended in a flurry of activity. Though I was invited to the after-party, I declined because I had unfinished business to attend to. I stayed behind at the reunion venue, and so did Rachel. In fact, as the others left ahead to the after-party, I intentionally stopped Rachel from leaving. The reason? To uncover the truth behind her attitude toward me. Once I confirmed we were alone, I turned to her and spoke. Do you remember what you said earlier? Huh. What was it about again? Don't play dumb. You were the one who said it. If I solved even one problem, you'd do whatever I asked. I have no idea what you're talking about. What a conveniently selective memory you've got. Hard to believe you graduated from Tokyo University. What did you just say? I'm just stating facts. I'll ask you one last time. Do you remember what you said earlier? With a deep sigh, Rachel finally responded. Yes, I remember. I didn't think you'd take it so seriously, but fine, do whatever you want. With that, she closed her eyes as if resigning herself to whatever was coming. You're misunderstanding something. It's not going to be anything like what you're imagining. Then what is it? Why did you stop me from leaving? It's simple. Why were you so insistent on pestering me, not just in middle school, but even today? At last, I asked the question that had been nagging at me for years. Rachel's taunting demeanor from earlier disappeared. She fell silent, refusing to answer. What are you going to say? You don't have a reason. Why does it even matter to you? Seeing that this was going nowhere, I decided to answer her question first. I explained why I'd stopped attending school. Family circumstances, the worsening of my chronic condition, and how the exacerbation of that condition was linked to harassment I'd experienced at school, thanks to you constantly picking on me in middle school. One of your so-called admirers among the upperclassmen decided to target me. That's when the daily harassment began. I continued my story. I explained how the harassment escalated day by day. On top of that, Rachel's persistent pestering wore me down mentally, little by little. Combined with the worsening of my chronic condition, I eventually reached the point where I couldn't bring myself to go to school anymore. That's everything. Now you should have enough context to explain your blatant hostility toward me. Your turn. Answer my question now. Ha. Before I could finish, Rachel suddenly burst into laughter as if she'd had some sort of epiphany. What's so funny? Have you lost your mind? Oh, I see now. Fine, I'll answer your question then. Rachel began to explain why she'd been so fixated on me. Her actions, she said, weren't out of admiration or anything positive. They stemmed from resentment. She revealed that her hostility toward me was motivated by revenge for something she believed I'd taken from her mother. I don't get it. That doesn't make any sense. I've never done anything like that. Shut up and listen. Rachel continued her story. One day, she saw her mother visiting my father's diner. The two of them were chatting so intimately that it was obvious their relationship wasn't just platonic. Soon after, Rachel discovered the shocking truth. Her mother had married my father. Well, things are getting complicated, I said. I didn't know much about my mother's past, but this is unexpected. I get why you kept pestering me now. You ruined my family, and that's all you have to say. But I guess your chronic illness worsening and keeping you from high school was just karma. Maybe that was divine punishment. With that, Rachel picked up her things and quickly left the venue. I understand the story now, but it doesn't sit right with me. The remarriage was my parents' decision, not mine. This so-called revenge of hers is entirely misplaced, I thought. As I mulled over the situation, I wandered through the now empty venue. So that's what she meant by, I'm glad we could meet again at the reunion. It seemed I'd been harboring resentment without even knowing it. Her saying, I ruined her family, didn't seem to make sense. Judging by how my parents seemed, it didn't look like it was some kind of home-wrecking situation. The whole thing felt tangled. Countless possibilities raced through my mind, but I knew that keeping it all to myself wouldn't help the situation move forward. I decided to head home, leaving the now empty venue behind. The sun had long set, and the lonely sound of cicadas echoed through the night as I made my way back. When I got home, I thought it was the perfect opportunity to talk to my parents about what Rachel had told me. So that's the story, I began. Seems like I've been on the receiving end of some misplaced resentment. That girl. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have noticed something was wrong. It's not your fault, Mom. Nobody could have anticipated something like this. It's partly my fault, too. I should have paid closer attention. I'm sorry. No need to apologize. That's not why I brought it up. But Rachel's story still sticks with me. Is what she said true? Oh, that. I was planning to tell you about it at some point, but there's a bit of a misunderstanding in her version. Yes, there's more to it. A misunderstanding. Yeah, let me explain. My parents then told me the truth. After hearing their side of the story, I lay back on the floor, staring at the ceiling. I guess I need to let Rachel know, don't I? I thought. I had a feeling this might lead to more trouble, but I couldn't just keep it to myself. So I decided to meet with Rachel and tell her the truth on another day. Having made the decision, the next challenge was that I didn't have her contact information. With the help of a middle school friend and some effort, I managed to set up a meeting with Rachel about a week later. A week later, I arrived at the cafe a bit early to pass the time, and soon I spotted Rachel approaching from a distance with an unmistakably irritated expression. Well, someone's in a bad mood today. Of course I am. Do you think I'd be thrilled to be called out by you? Wow, you really don't hold back, huh? Shut up. So, what's this about my misunderstanding at the reunion? You mentioned my father's remarriage. Afterward, I spoke with my parents, and it turns out the truth is a little different from what you think. What do you mean? Don't worry, I'll explain everything in order. I then relayed the story my parents had told me. The reason my father and Rachel's mother remarried was that Rachel's father had thrown her mother out of the house, leaving her with nowhere to go. My father did that. It's not a pleasant story, I know. Want me to stop? No, keep going. Noticing the change in her demeanor, I continued. Rachel's father had been obsessed with having a male heir to take over his business. When it was discovered that Rachel's mother was infertile, they struggled for years to have children. Eventually, after undergoing extensive fertility treatments, she became pregnant only to give birth to a girl. Her father, enraged that she hadn't produced a son, expelled Rachel's mother from the family. "So, my mother disappeared because I was born?" Rachel asked. "There's no need to blame yourself. That's something entirely out of your control." "I know, but still. Do you want me to stop here?" "No. I want to hear everything." "You don't look like you're holding up well," I said. The elegant, composed Rachel I saw at the reunion was nowhere to be found. "But it's better for you to know the full story, even if it hurts, than to live with half-truths." "All right, if you insist." Understanding Rachel's need for clarity, I shared everything my parents had told me without holding back. First, I explained that Rachel's father had never truly loved her mother. After their separation, he only took Rachel in for the sake of appearances. Her mother left penniless and wandering. Eventually, she met my father by chance, and the two remarried. Ironically, after their remarriage, they had a son, my younger brother, and their life has continued since then. That's it. As harsh as it is, that's the truth. That can't be true. Rachel cried, still unable to fully process the truth. She showed visible signs of distress. Of course, hearing this would be a shock. Anyone would be shaken to their core. If I were in her shoes, I might have passed out on the spot. Suddenly, Rachel stood up and began staggering toward the exit. "Hey, what's wrong?" "Sorry, I just need to be alone for a bit." With that, Rachel quietly left the cafe. I always thought she lived in a completely different world, but even someone like her has struggles and pain. It's obvious when you think about it. But still, maybe the way she acted toward me in middle school was her way of avoiding the reality. Would things have been different if I talked to her properly back then? Not that it matters now. After reflecting for a moment, I finished my coffee and left the cafe. I wandered the neighborhood for a while, but I couldn't shake the image of Rachel's face after hearing the truth. I thought telling her the truth would give me some closure, but it just left a bad taste in my mouth. Unable to bring myself to return home, that night I decided to stay at a nearby hotel. After checking in at the front desk and entering my room, I noticed a message on my phone. To my surprise, it was from Rachel. The message said she had something she wanted to talk about and asked if we could meet somewhere soon. She didn't specify what she wanted to talk about. Maybe she's planning to get back at me. Judging by the tone, though, it seems like she sorted through her thoughts a bit. Either way, I've got no reason not to go. Curious about what she wanted to discuss, I arranged to meet Rachel again 2 days later. When the day came, I arrived early once more, relaxing with a cup of coffee. I noticed Rachel walking toward me from the entrance, looking slightly awkward and uneasy. She's really wearing her emotions on her sleeve again. Was she always this easy to read? I'd wondered. As soon as Rachel sat down, she bowed her head deeply toward me. I'm so sorry for all the terrible things I've done to you." Whoa, where's this coming from all of a sudden? After our last talk, I couldn't fully accept what you told me. Honestly, I thought it might be a lie, but after doing my own research, I found out everything you said was true. Of course it's true. I wouldn't make up something like that. I'm truly sorry I treated you so horribly, all because of my own selfish assumptions. Well, yeah, but if you're apologizing sincerely now, that's enough for me. We're taught in elementary school that when we do something wrong, we say sorry. Hearing that from you is enough. I'm not going to hold it against you anymore. You're really such a good person, after all the awful things I've done to you. That's in the past now. More importantly, what are you going to do from here? Now that you know the truth, are you still planning to stay in that house? No. Actually, I've decided to leave home, and I've already quit my father's company. Well, that sounds like a solid decision. Yeah, and again, I'm truly sorry. I know I don't deserve to be forgiven, but I just had to tell you directly. That's all I wanted to say. As Rachel stood to leave, I quickly called out to her. What? What is it? Oh, sorry. Sorry. There's something I want to talk to you about too. Something you want to talk about. You said you quit the company, right? Do you have another job lined up? Oh, no, not yet. Perfect timing then. Why don't you come work at my company? I could really use someone like you. What? Hearing my offer, Rachel froze, her expression a mixture of disbelief and confusion. This isn't about forgiving you for what you've done. It's just that, in a way, you're a victim too. You got caught up in the selfish actions of the adults around you, and it destroyed your sense of stability. That earns a bit of sympathy, that's all there is to it. So you don't have to decide right now, but think it over. Tears suddenly began streaming down Rachel's face as she quietly spoke. Honestly, how can you be so kind? Why? Why would you go out of your way for someone like me? You don't owe me anything. You're giving me way too much credit. I'm not some noble person. Thank you, but why me? Stop putting yourself down. It doesn't help. The reason is simple. I think you're talented. Isn't that enough? Yes, it is. I'll gratefully accept your offer. And so, Rachel began working at the company my brother and I had started together. It turned out my instincts were spot on. Rachel's work lived up to her Tokyo University credentials, and ever since she joined, our company's performance has skyrocketed. Around the same time, her father's company suffered a significant downturn. Rumor had it that Rachel's departure had dealt an even bigger blow to the company than anyone had anticipated. How ironic. The daughter he took in solely for appearances was the one propping up his company. If he'd paid more attention to those around him, things might have turned out differently. Then again, knowing him, he probably wouldn't have changed. Not that it matters to me anymore. Meanwhile, Rachel reconciled with her mother, and now she occasionally comes over to our house to share meals with us. As for my brother, while their blood relation made things a bit awkward at first, they've since grown to be close siblings. Just the other day, at Rachel's request for dessert, the two of them went to an all-you-can-eat sweets buffet. They joked and laughed about how often they're mistaken for a couple whenever they go out together. So much has happened, really, so much. Up until recently, our impressions of each other couldn't have been worse. But people make mistakes, and as long as they're willing to acknowledge them and take a step forward, life can turn out better than you'd ever imagine. Watching the smiles on Rachel and my family's faces, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we'd all come. Keith is my name. I work for a small to mid-sized corporation and am 36 years old. I ride my bike to work every day because I live close by. I reasoned that I might as well ride if I was going to. I therefore made a point to ride along the wide riverside after purchasing a road bike. Although I've completely fallen for the allure of riding, I use the riverbank path for another reason. It is due to a woman who was seated on a riverbank bench. About a month ago, I first laid eyes on her. I was using a different route, one that passes through this riverbag, to get to work. I can see runners out on their morning jogs, which is a great way to unwind before work, and the breeze feels nice. As I glanced over the river, I was considering making this my regular route. At that moment, I noticed a woman seated on a bench. She was dressed in unusually light clothing for the season, even though it was October and getting colder. Despite her seeming coldness, she was absorbed in her knitting. I was first curious about what she was creating, but as soon as she started knitting a little, I knew right away that it was a heart-shaped piece. How did I find out? Because knitting hearts and I have a long and meaningful history together. My bike key still has the yarn heart mascot on it. Sarah Grant, my first girlfriend and love interest, gave it to me. It's a little worn out now, having been purchased more than 20 years ago. Sarah was my first girlfriend in middle school. I had the time of my life, even if our dates were mainly spent in parks or chatting for hours at a cheap diner because we were broke students. Sarah was really cute, with a round face that fit her short hair and charming dimples when she laughed. To get her to laugh, I did a lot of dumb things. Although it seems embarrassing now, I was very serious at the time. She was constantly cooperative and even brought me Valentine's Day chocolates that were handmade. I was really pleased, man. It didn't matter if I spent a lot of time in the bathroom and had a negative reaction to those chocolates. Although Sarah was good with her hands, she didn't appear to enjoy cooking. But she has excellent knitting skills. She was always knitting, even in middle school. Teachers would sometimes reprimand her or take away her supplies because she would bring her yarn to class and knit during breaks. Because she had knitted this heart specifically for me, I was much more thrilled when she gave me this heart mascot than when I got the Valentine's chocolates. That day, I must have looked foolish because I was smiling so much, but it made Sarah laugh. For me, everything about Sarah was new. After our first date, our first present, and our first kiss, I truly believed that we would be together forever since I truly loved her. For sneaking out to talk in the park late at night, we were even apprehended by the police. We couldn't stay together, but I still cherish every moment I spent with her. Sarah had to change schools after a year of dating, and it was in a different state, which was difficult for a student like me to travel to. Cell phones weren't common among students back then, and not everyone had one. "We'll definitely write to each other," we promised, as I tearfully saw her off. I wrote letters every week, and at first Sarah responded. But gradually her replies slowed and eventually stopped altogether. I tried sending more letters, but they never reached Sarah, and finally they got returned to me. Our relationship, strained by the distance, fizzled out without even a proper breakup. Those memories randomly came back to me while I was riding my road bike on the way home from work. She's there, knitting on the riverbank. Even when it's time for me to head back, she's finished with the heart-shaped knitting, and I stop my bike to watch, wondering what she'll make next. Maybe it's plain curiosity, or perhaps I see a bit of Sarah in her. After all, the only woman I'd ever seen knitting was Sarah. But the woman suddenly started unraveling the knitted heart. She had finished it. "What?" I exclaimed, genuinely thinking it was such a waste after all the effort she put into it. I've always seen her engrossed in her knitting, head down, so I never really saw her face. But she seemed to have a sad expression. I felt a little uneasy, but she and I were total strangers after all. I was just observing her without any real connection, thinking I should get moving on my road bike. A strong gust of wind blew. I braced myself to avoid falling, but the keychain I got from Sarah broke off due to wear and tear, rolling down toward the riverside. "Whoa, hey, wait," I shouted. To make matters worse, it didn't roll onto the grass, but down a staircase, gaining momentum and making it hard to stop. In a panic, I jumped off my bike and ran down the riverside. I couldn't lose the precious gift from Sarah. In that rush of emotion, I yelled out loud. It was when I looked up after catching the mascot, which luckily stopped near the bottom of the stairs. I caught her eye when she turned towards me at the sound of my loud voice. The first expression I saw on her, though she was skinny and her hair grown out, she looked just like Sarah. "Sarah?" I gasped softly, eyes wide. Her face seemed to ask, "How do you know my name?" And then her eyes shifted to the mascot in my grasp. "No way, is that you, Keith?" Her recognition confirmed to me that she was indeed Sarah, and I found myself frozen for a moment. Well, of course, I thought she looked similar, but I didn't think she was the real deal. Long time no see. "You don't look well," though I knew I had to say something, anything. So I forced out the words, but it seemed I'd stepped on a landmine. Sarah smiled, her head bowed. Yeah, a bit of a rough patch." The reunion after such a long time felt awkward. Thinking to break the ice as evening approached, I decided to walk her home. Maybe, like old times, we could chat about the past, If we walked home together, like we used to, we might be able to share some old stories. But then I heard Sarah's bombshell. I don't have a home. The cozy atmosphere turned super awkward. Caught off guard, I blurted out, "What do you mean you don't have a home?" What a spur-of-the-moment question. Sarah, with a self-deprecating tone, confessed, "Actually, after I moved, my parents got divorced. Neither of them wanted to take me in, so I ended up in a facility. It's tough to get a decent job with just a high school diploma. Now I'm living in a cheap place, picking up odd jobs here and there." She said this while staring at her yarn. I realized then that Sarah must be struggling financially, unable to afford new yarn. That's why she's been unraveling old pieces. Her light clothing wasn't a fashion choice. It's all she had. "Did you stop sending letters because you went to that facility?" I asked. "Yeah, things were hectic, and I couldn't take your letters, Keith. I didn't know your address, so I couldn't send any." "I'm so sorry," she admitted, still looking downcast. I just wanted to see Sarah smile again, like in the old days. Even if our connection had naturally faded, I still cared for her. I still loved her. I just wanted her, someone I have feelings for, to be happy. "Listen, Sarah, if it's okay, could you make this again?" I asked, handing her the worn-out heart-shaped mascot. "I'll buy the materials, please. You've kept this thing I gave you. Haha, am I really good enough?" She laughed a bit, surprised and touched. "I want it because it's you who made it," I replied. Sarah, at that, gave a modest, happy smile. Since then, Sarah started knitting my mascot again at a bench by the riverside. I'd buy whatever she told me to get and hand it to her. I considered going with her, but I didn't want her to worry about the cost, so I just handed her what I bought. In the mornings, I could do little more than greet her, but I made sure to stop by Sarah's place on my way home to talk, even for a bit. But the conversations were always about the past, about things we did in our club activities or embarrassing ourselves by hitting the wrong note during a singing contest. For us, the only common ground was those old stories. But that was enough because Sarah started to smile a little more. 2 weeks later, Sarah made a stunning heart-shaped mascot for me. It's clear she's improved her skills. Her mascots used to be just plain pink, but now they have red patterns on them and look much cuter. "Well, this looks like something you could buy in a store," I said. "Oh, come on, it's not that great," she replied. But the mascot I attached to my road bike was very popular at work. "I want one like this." "Where did you buy this?" It was particularly popular among the female employees. I spontaneously thought if Sarah sold the ones she made, she could make a living off of it. Nowadays, people thrive selling handmade items online. With some yarn, Sarah's creations would definitely sell. I was sure of it, partly because of my business intuition. So, when I suggested this to Sarah, she replied, "I can't do it." "Why not?" It was a hit with the women at work. "The problem is, I don't have an address," she said. It hit me then. Even if she made and sold the products without a permanent address, there would be no place to list for returns. She would be in a bind if there was a mistake or a return. I wish I could make a living off of knitting too, but reality is tough. "How about renting an address?" I suggested. Sarah, looking downcast, replied, "Many people these days don't want to use their home address, so there are services where you can rent one monthly." She was surprised. "I didn't know that, but I don't have the money. I'll cover the costs for materials and such. Once you make a profit, you can save it and eventually rent your own place." "But I don't want to trouble you, Heath." "Hannah, how about this? Think of it as a business deal. I believe your knitting will be a hit. It's not just about helping you because I love you. I'm truly in awe of Sarah's talent and want the world to see it. I'm willing to support you financially to make that happen." Finally, Sarah agreed, saying, "I'd want to try it for a year. If she doesn't see results in a year, she'll quit. With that understanding, I supported her under that promise. I stepped in to support Sarah, but honestly, I had underestimated the situation. I was hoping that Sarah's knitting would gain traction maybe around 6 months in, but Sarah's knitted goods started flying off the shelves almost instantly. It all began with her setting up a stall at a local flea market where her knitted items, especially earrings and scarves made with yarn, garnered a lot of attention. Thanks to this, her reputation grew. When she participated in paid craft fairs, she made a decent profit. Of course, I helped out at the events, but Sarah is just amazing. She participates in events every month and yet never runs out of stock, always producing new items. I often wondered, how can she knit this fast and maintain this quality? It seems like she also started advertising on social media. Apparently, she began taking custom knitting orders online. She especially became a hit with moms wanting knit items for their children. Sarah is always busy knitting. Once she had saved up a decent amount of money, she could afford to buy clothes, and Sarah became noticeably more lively. She had been a bit too skinny after all. Now, when she smiles, dimples form, making her look just like she used to. In just 6 months, Sarah became a handmade crafts artist who made a significant profit. She could purchase her own materials, and she no longer needed to stay in. Now she's living with me. About 3 months after she started selling her knit crafts, it honestly became more convenient for her to hold event meetings and get some assistance with delivery at my place. That's the official reason, at least. Sarah said she'd be fine living with me, and after the promised year passed, I took the plunge and proposed. She laughed and said we're pretty much like a married couple already and gladly accepted. We've discussed having a wedding once things slow down a bit, since Sarah is quite busy with her handmade orders. But to be honest, I just want her to finish her current crafts. After all, there are so many knitted items in our house waiting to be sold. I even built a shelf myself to help organize things on the very night she moved in, no less. Instead of a traditional wedding night, I was doing some DIY work for Sarah. It had been a while since I did something like this, and honestly, I struggled. Seeing my efforts, she tilted her head and asked, having trouble fitting it in. She said that because she noticed several bent and unusable nails around me. I just can't seem to get it right. Why does it keep bending? Why not try holding it firmly and give it another go? I took Sarah's advice and tried again, but I messed up about 7 times. The shelf I finally made turned out to be quite handy, but it seems we might need another one soon, or there won't be any room left to walk. Never thought I'd be surrounded by so much yarn. I used to glance at the wall. There, I saw an old, worn-out heart-shaped mascot Sarah made for me, and a new one she had crafted recently. A question popped into my head. I've always wondered, why did you choose to make mascots out of knitting? It's 3-dimensional and seems quite difficult. By now, Sarah crafts them effortlessly, but back then, stuffing them with cotton must have been a challenge. As I pondered, Sarah, still knitting, said with a chuckle, "Who knows? Why don't you look it up yourself?" So I did some research on mascots and understood her point. A mascot is a person, animal, or object believed to bring good luck. She gifted me the heart mascot, hoping to bring me good fortune. Maybe it's thanks to this mascot that I'm living such a blessed life now. It might even be the reason we got back together. Truly, it brought me so much luck. And as I thought this, I lovingly washed. On your anniversary, bring your wife here. She'll surely love it. That's what my mother said in my memory. I've carried them in my heart all these years. Hey, Bobby, how's the concrete? Yeah, I'm on it. My name's Bobby. I'm turning 35 this year. Been working in construction for a good while now. Man, it's hot today. I took a moment, looking up at the sky. I met my wife, Kate, on a day just as hot. It's been a bit over 10 years since I met her as a newbie. Has it really been that long? Perhaps now is the perfect time to take her to that fancy diner I remember, the restaurant my mother always cherished. It will always be in my memory. When I was 10, my dad, whom I loved dearly, passed away from terminal cancer. His sudden absence hit me hard back then. How about we go somewhere nice one day? Mom suggested and took me to a French restaurant. It had a solemn atmosphere with counter seats. Mom, we're eating here. It was my first time in such a place, so I asked her a bit nervously. This is where your dad proposed to me. Wow, so it's a special place for you and Dad? Yes, honey. Today marks our 10th wedding anniversary. That's why we're here. She smiled warmly. Afterward, while eating the many delicious dishes that came out, I asked her about her memories of my father. We talked about many things, which made me feel happy for the first time in a long time. When you have your anniversaries, bring your future wife here. She'll surely appreciate it. On our way home, Mom shared those words. The mention of a future wife made me blush, but her words stuck with me even as I grew up. Many years have passed since then, and before I realized it, we're celebrating our 10th wedding anniversary. I want to visit that place with my wife, Kate. Kate prefers Italian cuisine, but would she enjoy a French meal? No, I'm sure she'll be fine. No one could resist those dishes. Hey, Bobby, quit daydreaming. You're slacking. Sorry. I snapped back to reality and resumed my work. 10 years ago, while working just like this, Kate approached me. Excuse me, are you the guy from back then? She suddenly asked. Huh. Who are you? Oh, I'm sorry. I mistook you for someone else. You look like someone I knew, but it's a memory from when I was little, so please don't mind it. What do you mean? Well, actually, for some reason, I became curious and wanted to know more. It turns out the man was someone who had done a huge favor for Kate when she was younger. I called out to you because you look so familiar, she said, looking embarrassed. This chance encounter led us to exchange contact info, and a few months later, we started dating and eventually got married. However, Kate never told me what exactly happened between her and that man back in the day. She said it was a precious memory and that she couldn't share the story. I was curious, but I figured it would be weird to press her about it now. She'll probably tell me someday. I needed to focus on preparing for our anniversary. A fancy restaurant. Is it really that good? It's amazing. My mom took me there once, and I haven't found a place that can compare. If your mother-in-law says it's good, I bet it's a fantastic place. I'm looking forward to it. So you'll come with me. Of course, if you recommend it that highly. I'm excited. It's sure to give us wonderful memories. Seeing Kate's happy face filled me with anticipation. Truth be told, my mother passed away before Kate and I got married, but I'm sure she's celebrating our anniversary up in heaven. I couldn't help but smile imagining her joyful face on the day of our anniversary. Hey, Kate. I'm sorry the meeting with the client ran late. It's okay. I'll wait for you here. I didn't have time to go back to the office after the meeting, so I rushed straight to the restaurant. I had planned to dress up in a nice suit for our special day, but it didn't work out. Upon arriving at the reserved restaurant, I approached the hostess. Excuse me, I had a reservation under the name Bobby. Welcome, she said, but the hostess who had greeted me with a smile furrowed her brows. Excuse me, but what are you wearing? Is there something wrong with what I'm wearing? Well, are you wearing work clothes? I was taken aback by her unexpected remark. Yes, it's my work attire, but it's for sales, not construction, so it's clean. The hostess looked even more displeased. Is there a problem? I asked. She looked shocked. Certainly, it's work attire, but not for construction work, so it's clean. I don't recall getting such a displeased look. Sorry, but we don't have any tables available today, the hostess said with a stern expression, glaring at us. Wait a minute. What's the deal? We made a reservation, Kate confronted the hostess. Our restaurant is fully booked with wealthy clientele, the hostess retorted. With a glance to the side, I could see Kate trembling with anger. Taking a deep breath to calm herself, Kate said, "If it's okay for us to take this to the Customer Advisory Center, then by all means, kick us out. Your restaurant's reputation will plummet, you know." At Kate's assertive remark, the hostess looked taken aback. "I understand. I'll consult with the owner," she reluctantly said and disappeared towards the entrance. "What's with this place?" I muttered. "I'm sorry, it wasn't like this when I visited years ago." "I get it. The management changed, and so did the vibe of the place." I felt a pang in my heart at my wife's words. Indeed, the current diner is managed by the previous owner's son. Ever since he took over, I heard the reputation wasn't good. Hearing stories of them being picky with customers and having a bad attitude, I thought they were just rumors, but I can't believe how openly rude they are to customers. Lost in thought, the hostess returned. "It was an oversight on our part. We sincerely apologize. Please allow me to show you to your table. You said earlier there were no reservations available. What's up with that?" Kate snapped at the hostess, who responded with a raised eyebrow. "You want our food, right? Our restaurant is always fully booked. Follow me to your table," the hostess said rather coldly. It reminded me of a grumpy but skilled old sushi chef I saw on TV. Maybe this place has a similar vibe. "Kate, let's just sit for now." Holding back the rising anger, we followed the hostess to the counter. The interior hasn't changed much since I was a kid. However, the chef behind the counter looked clearly displeased. With a scowl, he began placing dishes in front of us. The food looked delicious, yet it didn't stimulate my appetite. "What's wrong?" "Not eating?" asked Kate as I tasted the dish. It was certainly delicious, but there was a lingering odd sensation. "What's this feeling?" I thought as I continued eating. Suddenly, Kate spoke. "How can you serve this to customers? Referring bagnets? What's with the hygiene standards of this place?" "What are you talking about?" The chef's face contorted with irritation. Kate continued glaring at him. "The crispiness of the batter is clearly not fresh. It's been left out at room temperature for too long, right? It's lost its color and firm texture." At her observation, the chef's eyes widened. My wife, listening on the side, hasn't lost her sharp tongue, I thought, impressed. "That's just your opinion. Where's your proof?" "Isn't it obvious just by looking at this dish?" "Well, it doesn't matter. I'll have our experienced journalists from our magazine come and secretly review your restaurant, and I'm sure they'll write an article that echoes my sentiments." "An article? You can't be serious." Both the restaurant owner and the hostess turned pale in an instant. Little did they know, Kate was a food critic for a gourmet magazine. "I came here today hoping to savor the nostalgic taste my husband always talked about, but both the service and the taste were let down. It's really disappointing. But I believe my husband is even more devastated than I am." "Are you prepared for the backlash to your poor service and food?" With a cold stare at the restaurant staff, Kate put down her fork. "Let's go. I'll cover the bill. If we stay here any longer, our wedding anniversary will turn into a disaster." "I get it, but I brought you here. Let me pay. In that case, I'll take you up on your offer. We still have some dishes coming out. We'll eat elsewhere. Thank you." After saying that to the hostess, Kate got up from her seat. I also stood up and headed toward the cashier. "Wait, hold on. No need for change." I laid several hundred bills on the counter and left the restaurant. I wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. As soon as we were out, I apologized to Kate. "I'm sorry for making you go through that. More importantly, are you okay? Must have been a shock to see your mother-in-law's favorite place like that." "Oh, I have a place I want to take you." "A place you want to take me?" I asked, surprised. "You'll surely create good memories there," she replied. She guided me to a small diner located near the other restaurant, where I was greeted by a familiar face. Welcome. Is that the guy from that time? I wondered. Though he had aged, there were traces of resemblance on his face. It was the gentleman who served us dishes when my mother and I visited that diner. In other words, the previous owner of that restaurant. Kate whispered, "Admire." He handed over the main restaurant to his son and continued his business here. "Really, sir?" I asked. "The usual, please," he replied with a grin. "Gotcha. Young lady, you want the salmon platter, right?" The former owner gave Kate a wide grin. "Young lady," he said, and I felt a sense of déjà vu hearing Kate being addressed that way. I had encountered a similar scene in the past. Oh, that time. Did you finally remember? Kate's voice was full of excitement. "I'm so glad you finally remembered," she exclaimed. Turns out, there was more to the restaurant memory at that place. While having a meal with my mother, a little girl had been intently watching our food. She seemed to be alone, with no parents in sight. Wondering what was going on, I looked her way. In a faint voice, she said, "Well, that food looks so yummy." Apparently, she was dining in the only private room available with her father. However, they only ordered alcohol and snacks, so she was getting hungry. He only orders stuff like fries. Plus, he gets drunk and won't wake up, so I get really hungry. She spoke with tears just forming in her eyes. I felt an urge to do something for her. "You okay? Hungry? You can eat this." I offered her my plate. She responded, "Really? Are you sure? Thank you so much." She eagerly started eating the stew and terrin. Afterwards, the previous owner, who had observed the interaction, treated her to a complimentary meal. I clearly remembered her happily eating the food. Why had I forgotten about it? "No way," I whispered. "Kate, was that you back then?" "I never forgot how kind you were to me," she said. "I recognized you right away when I saw you, the scar on your forehead. I could never forget." I had a large scar on my forehead from a bicycle accident when I was a kid. "I was so happy to see you again, but you never noticed me. I decided to stay quiet until you remembered. That's why I never mentioned it." Seeing Kate's innocent laughter made my heart warm. I can't believe I married that girl from back then. I never thought I'd marry the kind man from that day. The meal at that restaurant was honestly terrible, but let's make it up here. Let's give you the best hospitality. The previous owner smiled warmly. "Yes, please," I replied with a smile. After that, we enjoyed a delicious meal. Just as I remembered, maybe because of the earlier unpleasant experience, it felt even more delightful. Who would have thought that boy from back then would grow up so well? The head chef seemed to remember the incident well. It feels like a dream to be eating the chef's food together again. Kate joyfully ate the dishes prepared by the previous owner. It felt so good, like I had finally fulfilled what my mother always said. "Sorry for the unpleasant experience my sons caused you. My apologies." The chef bowed deeply. "It's not your fault. Please don't worry about it," I reassured him. Raising his head, the previous owner continued, "Actually, I have a favor to ask. Ever since they took over the restaurant, they've become arrogant, even to regular customers. The reputation of the diner has plummeted. Can you help teach them a lesson?" "Is that really okay?" Kate asked, looking slightly pleased. "Yes, it's fine. I don't want the diner's reputation to get any worse. With your help, please do what you think is best." "Understood," Kate answered with a beaming smile. "I hope she doesn't go overboard," I thought to myself, but seeing her smile gave me a good feeling. A few weeks later, the diner received a scathing review in a gourmet magazine where Kate was in charge. Because of the prominent criticism, it seemed the diner lost all its customers. Later, it seemed the place was on the brink of shutting down, but was acquired by someone else. Seeing a place with so many memories face such hardships is a bit bittersweet. I guess so, but the new owner seems to be a very nice person, and he's carrying on the taste of the original owner. I went there on business the other day, and the place looked so much better. It made me nostalgic. Nostalgic? Kate asked. It had the same vibe as the place where we first met. Hey, in a few years, should we take our child there too? That sounds nice, but with a little one, we might be a bother. Maybe in about 10 years, I said, gently patting Kate's belly as I spoke. Going to that restaurant might be a long way off, but the idea of taking our child to a place filled with so many cherished memories is something to look forward to. I wonder what kind of future we will have built by then. With that thought, I gave a soft chuckle.